Chapter 1607. Drip. Drip. The tip of the sword that had pierced through the three-headed dragon's back was dripping with dark red blood. It fell to the ground bit by bit, forming a pool of blood that was neither big nor small. In the distant horizon, the three-headed dragon did not seem to feel the pain of having its heart pierced through at all. Its 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes were fixed on Noah, not moving away even a little bit. Noah did not avoid the three-headed dragon's gaze. He also stared at the three-headed dragon's red jade-like eyes. His hand that was holding the sword that had pierced through the three-headed dragon's heart did not tremble at all. It was as if he was not surprised by this result at all. His expression did not change at all. In this instant, whether it was the surrounding gods or the allied army on the ground, they all fell into a daze. They did not recover for a long time. It was as if only Noah and the three-headed dragon were left in this world. It was terrifyingly silent. After an unknown amount of time, the three-headed dragon calmly opened his mouth. "You won." "Yes." Noah replied as if it was a matter of course. "I won." The three-headed dragon was silent for a while before saying this. "You are very powerful." Noah looked up slightly and said sincerely, "Aren't you the same? However, my story ends here." The three-headed dragon's tone had a trace of melancholy and relief. "The next era is yours, hero of mankind." "You are wrong, Demon King." Noah shook his head and said what was in his heart almost subconsciously. "The next era should be the domain of the people of this world. It should not belong to an outsider like me." "Outsider?" The three-headed dragon was stunned at first. Then, as if he had seen through Noah's heart, his 3 pairs of red jade-like eyes shone with an unprecedented light. He was in disbelief and he muttered, "So that's how it is. So that's how it is. Not a hero of mankind, but a protector of the world. So that's how you can easily wipe out the apocalypse of mankind." In the instant that his life was about to end, the three-headed demonic dragon actually saw through Noah's true nature. Not the hope of humanity, but the hope of the world, the hope of all worlds. The three-headed dragon muttered as it stared closely at Noah. A smile suddenly appeared on its ferocious face. "So, I was surpassed by such an existence. How glorious." Noah didn't say anything else. He just silently held the knight's sword that pierced through the heart of the three-headed dragon and slowly closed his eyes. However, at this time, the three-headed dragon suddenly reached out and grabbed Noah's hand that was holding the sword hilt. "Son of Heaven, the Son of Heaven who brings hope to all the worlds, let me, Demon King Dakaha, give you my final blessing. I hope that the blessings of good and evil can accompany you forever, and contribute to everything in this world." After saying that, a dazzling starlight flickered from the body of the three-headed dragon. Like flowing water, it flowed along the arm of the three-headed dragon that was holding onto Noah's sword and into Noah's body. At this moment, Noah clearly felt it. In the depths of his heart, the cosmic sea that was densely covered with nebulas suddenly began to rotate. Within it, more nebulas, brighter and wider, were gradually increasing, causing the cosmic sea to become even more dazzling and boundless. Feeling the changes in the cosmic sea, Noah suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the three-headed dragon with an extremely astonished gaze. In the face of Noah's astonishment, the three-headed dragon just closed its 3 pairs of eyes. As if it had completed its mission, it lost all signs of life. Bang! A burst of flames burned from the body of the three-headed dragon without any reason, burning that pure white ferocious dragon's body bit by bit until there was nothing left. Amidst the flames, the flag of absolute evil that the three-headed dragon carried on its back like a cloak remained intact. No, it was not in perfect condition. Under the burning of the flames, the pattern on the flag slowly changed. The flag that symbolized absolute evil slowly reverted back to the original flag that was the key to the seal. With the hills as the background, the flag symbolized the freedom of the maiden. That was the banner of no name. Looking at the flag floating in the flames, Noah subconsciously reached out his hand. Only then did the flames covering the flag disappear as if they had succeeded in their mission, allowing the flag to float into Noah's hand. The entire place fell silent. Oh! In the next second, thunderous cheers rang out from the ground like a tsunami. That was the cheers from the Alliance army. The cheers even reached the sky, clearly reaching the ears of Noah and the other gods. Thus, in the final trial of humanity, the oldest demon king with the title of Absolute Evil, Dakaha, had been successfully subdued. The faces of the gods of the hundreds of god groups became extremely unsightly, and they all began to panic. Even the final trial of humanity, which has risen to more than double digits, can't do anything to him? Is Is that really a human? How can a human do such a thing? What should we do now? The voices of the gods and Buddhas from all directions made the ancient wind god more and more agitated, and he could not help but curse loudly. Why are you panicking? It's just a human. Even if we can't kill him, he will still turn into a pile of dirt in 100 years. We are immortal gods, and we have all the time to slowly watch a human walk towards death. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice rang out. Is that so? The voice did not carry any emotion, and it sent chills down the spines of the gods' spines. You want to see me die? Noah's gaze swept across all the gods present. I'm afraid you won't have the chance. As soon as he finished speaking, Noah flipped his hand, and a shining parchment suddenly appeared in his hand. The parchment in Noah's hand turned into starlight and scattered little by little. Soon after, everyone present discovered it. In the sky, pieces of parchment lightly fluttered down like feathers. Gift game name: to the gods of heaven to impose sanctions. Impose sanctions to the gods in the heavens. Participation condition: the target of all adverse actions against the organizer is limited to the gods. Victory condition 1: defeat the organizer Noah Dole. Victory condition 2: illuminate the power of the gods hidden deep within the human individual. Defeat condition 1: if the organizer kills the participant, it will be considered a loss. Defeat condition 2: if the organizer causes a fatal injury to the participant, it will be considered a loss. Game Rule 1: before the game ends, all evasive actions are prohibited. Game Rule 2: before the game ends, all healing actions are prohibited. Game Rule 3: before the game ends, all offensive actions are effective against the organizer. Game Rule 4: before the game ends, all offensive actions are effective against the participant. Oath: only under the condition that the target of execution is someone who meets the participation condition, to guarantee the legitimacy of this game. Seal. When the contents of the parchment were imprinted in the eyes of the gods, all of their faces turned pale. All evasive actions are prohibited. All evasive actions are prohibited. The ancient wind god was also holding a piece of parchment in his hand. He stared at the contents of the parchment, his hands trembling. No. No. The words, all evasive actions are prohibited, made all of the gods who were planning to run away when the situation turned bad completely fail. Moreover, it was in a very bad way. Holding the ordinary knight's sword, Noah walked step by step in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. There is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you want to go. You can't blame anyone. In the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the phoenix. Noah's figure turned into a phantom and rushed toward one of the gods. The ordinary knight's sword in his hand was like moonlight, flashing past that god's neck. Poochie. With a tearing sound, a head with wide open eyes and a large amount of blood flew into the sky. Chapter 1608. Splash. Crimson blood sprinkled down from the sky and dyed Noah's clothes red. The deity whose head had been chopped off stopped in midair for a moment, and then fell toward the ground like a kite with a broken string. A deity had been completely killed by a single strike. All the deities widened their eyes and cried out in shock. How is this possible? He killed a deity in one hit. Impossible. That kind of thing can't happen. The deities couldn't be blamed for losing their composure. This situation was simply too illogical. Disregarding everything else, Noah had encountered many opponents in the past. Most of them had extremely tenacious vitality and immortality. Take Maxwell for example. Although his strength could enter the 4 digits in Noah's eyes, he was just a small character that was barely worth his attention. Yet, such a small character relied on the 3rd perpetual motion machine's immortality to stall Noah for a long time. In the end, Noah could only seal him. The so-called deities were also in this category. Compared to humans, deities had extremely powerful immortality. For example, there were only 3 ways to defeat a deity in a box. 1. Destroy it with force that could shake a planet. 2. Destroy it with the deity's weakness in myths and legends. 3. Destroy it with the same method that deities use. Apart from these 3 methods, there was no other way to destroy a deity. Now, Noah had only used an ordinary knight's sword, and he had killed a deity just like that? That was absolutely impossible. Only the ancient wind deity noticed the problem and immediately looked at the contract in his hand. On it, the 4th rule of the game was clearly written. Before the game ends, all attacks are effective against the participants. In other words, no matter what method Noah used, even if it was the most common weapon, it could still cause damage to a deity. What did this mean? It meant that in front of Noah, apart from strength, a deity was no different from a normal person. Piercing the heart would result in death. Chopping off the head would result in death. Cutting the abdomen would result in death. Even if his throat was slit, he would still die. In addition to the second rule of the game, all healing activities were prohibited before the game ended. The life force and immortality of the deities would be completely nullified. Injuries cannot be healed. There was no way to revive after death. This game of bestowment was simply a nightmare for deities. Clang. A ray of light blossomed from Noah's other hand, turning into another knight's sword, which Noah gripped tightly in his hand. With two swords in his hands, Noah re-entered the world of Godspeed. His body was like a ghost as he streaked across the void, leaving behind a series of light shadows. Like a mirage, he swept toward the god spirits one after another. Swish. The sharp knight's sword cut through the air, causing a flash of sword light to appear in the air. Poochie. The sword light flashed past the abdomen of a god who couldn't react at all and cut him in half. Blood splattered everywhere. Poochie. 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 Immediately, mirage-like phantoms flashed through the group of gods one after another. With continuous sword lights, the gods were beheaded and their necks were severed. Crimson blood splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of god spirits were buried by the two ordinary knight swords. Their corpses fell to the ground along with a large amount of blood. No. The bloody massacre caused fear to appear on the faces of all the god spirits in the hundreds of god spirits. Go. Don't give him a chance to use another cosmology. Otherwise we'll be finished. Ancient Wind God was also terrified and could only shout loudly. Don't worry. There are also conditions that are beneficial to us. The third rule of the game allows us to use any means of attack. That means we can attack together. As long as he doesn't have a chance to use another cosmology. We can't lose. Ancient Wind God's words finally caused the fear on the god spirits' faces to change into uncertainty and finally become ferocious. Go. Let's go together. Don't give him a chance to use another cosmology. As long as he doesn't use another cosmology, even if he's a three-digit main god, he won't be able to defeat so many gods. Go. Therefore, the gods all rushed towards Noah with ferocious expressions. Seeing all the gods attacking Noah, Ancient Wind God looked at the contract in his hand again with a gloomy expression. No matter what, if they wanted to escape from Noah's threat, they had to clear the bestowal game that Noah started using his authority as the organizer. If they cleared the game, not only would Noah lose, but the gods might even let Noah become their subordinate. At that time, not only would the sovereignty of all 24 sons fall into the hands of the gods, even Noah, who could use the another cosmology of the illusory star Taisway, and even annihilated the humans in the final trial, would become the goon's hired thug. That was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. In order to clear Noah's bestowal game, there were two conditions. Victory Condition 1. Defeat the organizer, Noah Dole. Victory Condition 2. Reveal the power of God hidden deep within the human body. Reveal the power of God hidden deep within the human body? Ancient Wind God was shocked. Speaking of which, that human did use the sword of words that can slay gods on the three-headed dragon. That's the power of the fire worship sect's god of victory, right? I know. Ancient Wind God was overjoyed. That human, Noah Dole, has the power of the fire worship sect's god of victory, Welslana. However, the Ancient Wind God's words only caused the contract in his hand to flash before it disappeared. What's wrong? Is the riddle wrong? Ancient Wind God was anxious. Impossible. That's definitely Welslana's golden sword. This proves that the human has the power of the fire worship sect's god of victory. There's no mistake. Yes. Noah's power did indeed come from the fire worship sect's god of victory, Welslana. However, other than Welslana, Noah had more than one god's power in his body. Don't forget, Noah's authority is an ability formed by the fusion of Welslana, Mercado, Red Dragon Emperor Drake, and his own power. In order to clarify the true form of the divine power hidden in Noah's body, the archaic wind god had to use Mercator's name in addition to Welslana's name. Ancient Wind God, who did not know this, was getting more and more anxious. What is it? While Ancient Wind God was panicking, Noah's bloody massacre continued. The mirage-like shadows kept darting back and forth among the gods. Clang. Sword lights that were as intoxicating as moonlight flashed across the space. Puchi puchi puchi. The sword lights swept across the gods at an astonishing speed, cutting their bodies into halves. Blood splattered everywhere. For a moment, the entire sky was filled with screams that shook people's hearts. The bloody massacre caused Noah, who was flying back and forth in the sky like a phantom, to be covered in the blood of the gods. His eyes carried a bone-chilling coldness. The two extremely ordinary night swords in his hands had completely transformed into sharp weapons that could kill gods and Buddhas. Every time he swung his swords, there would be a burst of red blood stains. Seeing the gods, who were famous in myths and legends, being slaughtered like dogs, the gods' hearts gradually collapsed. They were not allowed to escape. They were not allowed to heal. They were not even allowed to possess vitality and immortality that surpassed that of humans. Despair began to fill the gods' hearts. Chapter 1609. Time passed by mercilessly. The sun began to set, bringing dusk to this world. Under the dusk, on a red land, blood dyed this place a chilling color. The air was filled with the smell of blood, which was quite frightening. In the pool of blood that dyed the ground red, mutilated corpses lay there, piled up like a mountain. They were scattered all over the ground like garbage. No one would be willing to believe it, right? The corpses that were piled up like garbage were the corpses of gods and Buddhas that had a place in various myths and legends. At this moment, the corpses of gods and Buddhas were like the corpses of ordinary people. Their wounds were bleeding and there was no trace of life. They were piled up together without a burial place. Pa. The ancient wind god, who was holding a contract in his hand, knelt heavily on the ground. He supported himself with his hands on the ground, lowered his head, and his lips trembled as if he was out of his wits. Impossible. 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 The bloody massacre lasted from morning to dusk. It moved from the sky to the ground, creating this scene. Over 100 gods of the god groups were killed in this period of time. It was not hundreds of gods but hundreds of gods and groups of gods. For example, all the gods in Greek mythology were counted as a group of gods. All the gods in Norse mythology were counted as a group of gods. Naturally, all the gods in China's mythology were counted as a group of gods. Here, all the gods and Buddhas in hundreds of god groups were killed. There were at least millions of gods and Buddhas, or even tens of millions of gods and Buddhas. After all, there were 8 million gods and Buddhas in Japanese mythology. Even if the groups of gods in other myths and legends were not so exaggerated, there were definitely more than 1 or 200,000 gods and Buddhas. Not to mention there was more than one group of gods here. There were hundreds of them. All the gods in the hundreds of god groups had been killed by 2 ordinary night swords. Only the ancient wind godly spirit was left alive. Tap. While the ancient wind god was in an indescribable daze, footsteps sounded in front of him. The ancient wind god raised his head in a daze and looked in the direction of the voice. Among the piles of corpses, a figure holding 2 ordinary-looking night swords walked toward the ancient wind godly spirit with his back to the sun. His clothes had long been dyed red with blood. The tip of the night sword in his hand was dripping with dark red blood. In the eyes of the ancient wind spirit, that figure was like the god of death, and the god of slaughter was even more terrifying than Azidakaha. As a result, the ancient wind divine spirit, one of the 3 most powerful divine spirits, even his teeth began to chatter. His knees gave out and he couldn't even stand up. Under such circumstances, the ancient wind god roared at Noah like a madman. "You monster." Monster. He was indeed a monster. Otherwise, how could a human kill all the gods and Buddhas in hundreds of god groups? Even with the organizer's authority over the gods, the conditions to kill all the gods and Buddhas in the game had been reduced to the same level as ordinary people. Even the most ordinary weapon could cause damage, but the power of the gods and Buddhas had not been lost. Under the encirclement and annihilation of all the gods of over 100 pantheons, even the most powerful of the 3 digits, those main gods and deity kings, would be annihilated alive, wouldn't they? However, Noah had been killing for an entire day and he wasn't injured at all. He didn't even show any signs of exhaustion. If he had used another cosmology, it would have been excusable. However, Noah did not use another cosmology at all, and as a result he slaughtered all the gods of hundreds of god groups. Moreover, he killed them in the most direct way possible. If that wasn't a monster, then what was? Unfortunately, the ancient wind god didn't know. 1. Noah couldn't be exhausted. Because Noah had the spiritual personality of the 3rd perpetual motion machine. Whether it was his magic power, divine power, physical strength, or even mental strength, they were all infinite. 2. Who said that Noah didn't use another cosmology? Noah just didn't use another cosmology from illusory star Taisway. As early as the game started, Noah used another cosmology. Another simulated star map, another cosmology, given by absolute evil. Noah, who was indifferent to the ancient wind divine spirit's roar, raised his pitch-black eyes and continued to walk in the ancient wind divine spirit's direction. He looked directly at the ancient wind divine spirit and spoke indifferently. "Is that all your last words?" The ancient wind god's heart skipped a beat. He gritted his teeth and his face turned pale. Finally, the ancient wind god squeezed out these words. Let me go." Noah's lips curled into a mocking smile when he heard that. He continued to walk towards the ancient wind god without any change in his attitude. His slow footsteps seemed to be stepping into the depths of the ancient wind god's heart, causing the ancient wind god to feel fear. "Human." The ancient wind god had no choice but to yell. "Are you really going to kill all of us?" The mocking expression on Noah's face became more and more pronounced. He didn't say anything else and continued to walk toward the ancient wind god. In the blink of an eye, Noah was already in front of the ancient wind god. He looked down at the ancient wind god with a cold expression. "You reap what you sow." The ancient wind god finally understood what was going on. This time, Noah was really going to kill all of them. The ancient wind god felt despair and could only laugh bitterly. "Can you bear the sin of slaughtering over 100 god groups?" "Sin," Noah said sarcastically. "If it's not a sin to abandon the entire heavenly court and let the people of the lower realm die on their own, but it's a sin to kill gods like you who only know how to take advantage of others' misfortune. I'm willing to be a sinner." Noah made a merciless declaration. "Repent when you're in hell." The ancient wind god was shocked. He raised his head and roared with his eyes wide open. "Die." Amidst the hysterical roar, the ancient wind god's entire body swelled with an astonishing amount of spirit. Abruptly, the ancient wind god leaped up and pounced towards Noah. No matter what, the ancient wind god was a three-digit existence, and he was the strongest of them all. In terms of strength, even if he wasn't as strong as Az-Dakaha, he was still much stronger than the other postnatal gods. With Noah's strength, he couldn't guarantee that he could defeat the ancient wind god without using 3 incarnations at the same time. However, Noah just looked calmly at the ancient wind god who was charging toward him with an astonishing momentum. He opened his mouth slightly. "Activate Avesta." Counteract each other in turn. Simulate star map, another cosmology. A burst of starlight bloomed on Noah's body. At this moment, all the power of the ancient wind god's spiritual lattice, physical strength and gifts were superimposed on Noah, which made Noah's aura soar. Then, Noah activated the incarnation of Phoenix and swung his sword at the ancient wind god at lightning speed. Clang. With the help of Phoenix's lightning speed and simulate star map, another cosmology, the sword, which was more powerful than the 3-digit number in the heavenly court, cut through the space. The sword light flashed through the space and slashed the ancient wind god's neck. Pucci. Crimson blood splattered into the air with a clear tearing sound. In the end, Noah was the only one who survived. In the middle of the mountain of corpses of gods and Buddhas from hundreds of god groups, the scene of him holding 2 swords and his back facing the setting sun made everyone from the Alliance army, including White Yaksha, Sarah, Shadora, Fei Si, Jiao Lu, Jialing, and Non Mei who had rushed to the scene, all of them were dumbfounded. They couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. Chapter 16:10. That night, everyone in the Alliance army returned to Vampire's castle and held a grand celebration banquet. The celebration banquet was organized by the communities of the East, South and North districts, which were the Thousand Eyes, Dragon Horn Griffin Lion, and Salamandra. All expenses would be accounted for by the 3 communities. The other communities only needed to enjoy themselves and did not need to bear any burden. Because of this, from the evening onwards, every street in the vampire castle was filled with banquets, and the place was filled with laughter and laughter. It was only at this moment that everyone forgot which community they belonged to. They gathered together, laughing and chatting loudly as they enjoyed the delicious food. The demon king that threatened Box Ting had been defeated. Of the oldest demon king in the humans' final trial, Az-Dakaha was the last one. In other words, now that the humans had all been annihilated in the final trial, there would no longer be any large-scale threats in Box Ting. Holding a celebration banquet for this was a matter of course. What's more, Noah had fought the 3-headed dragon alone. This time there were almost no casualties in the Alliance army. Even if it was for this result, everyone should have a good celebration. And at the celebration banquet, it was inevitable that there would be some topics to talk about. It went without saying that Noah, the biggest contributor, had become the most frequently mentioned existence in everyone's mouth. He had once sealed millions of gods and held sovereignty over all 24 suns. Even White Yaksha, Halloween Queen, and the great sage, Heaven's Equal, recognized this man. Now, he had single-handedly annihilated the great demon king that threatened the entire Box Ting. Achievements after achievements, legends after legends, made Noah a godlike existence in everyone's hearts. Everyone who mentioned Noah had an expression and tone full of worship and longing. It was believed that if Noah died now with this worship and longing, he would be able to become a heroic spirit, or even gain faith and become a god, right? Now, the name Noah Doria was so famous. Of course, the story of how Noah had slaughtered over 100 gods was even more interesting. The scene of him standing in the middle of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood with his back facing the setting sun and holding a sword with both hands was really shocking. None of the communities that joined the Alliance army belonged to the upper class of gods. In addition, the gods of the upper echelons had openly surrounded the castle of vampires and brazenly seized the sovereignty of the sun. They had also disregarded the safety of the residents of the lower world and helped the three-headed demonic dragon in order to frame Noah. This had long incited public anger. Therefore, when the matter of Noah slaughtering all the deities in the group of over 100 deities was mentioned, there was only delight in everyone's hearts. There was no grudge at all. The gods of the upper echelons probably felt that since they were ready to abandon the people of the lower realm, it didn't matter whether their reputation was good or bad, right? However, Noah had annihilated the humans in the final trial and gained the sovereignty of all 24 suns. This had completely shattered the gods of the upper echelons' decision to rebuild the lower world, so the gods of the upper echelons could only stay here. In this way, the actions of the gods would completely tarnish their reputation. If they didn't properly clean up the mess, it might affect the belief of the residents of the lower realm in the gods. At that time, the gods of the upper echelons would really be troublesome. Presumably, in the following days, the gods of the upper echelons of the lower world would be very busy. However, that had nothing to do with Noah in the slightest. Now, this greatest hero was in the main hall of the throne hall, being toasted by everyone. Cheers. Under such a neat and orderly sound, everyone present surrounded the round table that was filled with all kinds of fine wine and delicacies, drinking with a cheerful expression. The people present were the rulers of the East, South, and North districts, as well as the strongest helpers, the great sage of the ocean cover, the great sage of the chaotic heavens, and the Queen's Knight. The rest were the people of no name. Everyone was holding a wine glass in their hands, except for the 11-year-old Ren and Sandora, who were not allowed to drink. They could only hold drinks in their hands and toasted each other in a burst of laughter. While enjoying the fine wine and delicacies, everyone started various topics about the greatest hero of the battle. I didn't know that Mr. Noah had actually obtained the authority of the organizer. Black Rabbit helped Noah pour wine and asked somewhat excitedly. The authority of the organizer for the deities, when did Mr. Noah obtain this authority? Just after using the another cosmology of the illusory star Tai Sui to seal the millions of deities. Noah didn't hide anything and directly answered. After that, the central government of the Boxers recognized my contribution and granted me the authority of the organizer for the deities. I see, so there's no name of any community in the sender's part. 16 Knights raised his eyebrows at Noah. However, you dared to use the authority of the organizer to slaughter all the deities of hundreds of deities, little brother. That's right, Fei Niao said in a serious tone. Now, the deities of the upper echelons of the Boxers shouldn't dare to provoke Noah anymore, right? But is this okay? Yao tilted his head. Won't Noah attract public anger from the deities by doing this? You think too much, little girl? Flood Dragon Lu laughed. Those deities made a bad move. In order to eliminate little brother Noah, they didn't hesitate to disrupt the Demon King's annihilation battle and help the humans in the final trial. This kind of behavior has attracted public anger from the entire Boxers. If the deities of the upper echelons have any brains, they should distance themselves from these slaughtered idiots as soon as possible. Otherwise, even their faith might be affected. So, the deities of the heavenly realm won't dare to cause trouble for little brother Noah, Jialing said sarcastically. Those guys' faces are like that. Don't be happy too early. White Yiksha shook his head and said very seriously. Although the deities of the heavenly realm won't dare to cause trouble for this kid, slaughtering deities isn't a small matter. In people's hearts, deities have always been on the side of good. This kid slaughtered hundreds of deities and was demoted to a demon king. It's not impossible. Everyone fell silent. Especially Flood Dragon Lu and Jialing, who had a deep expression. Flood Dragon Lu and Jialing were considered demon kings because they had once been enemies with the deities of the heavenly realm. Noah slaughtered hundreds of deities. Even if he didn't do anything wrong, he probably wouldn't be able to escape the title of demon king. In this regard, Noah just calmly drank his wine and said this disapprovingly. There's nothing to worry about. Just like the so-called deities, there are those like Sakura and Sun Wukong who truly care about the people of the lower realm. There are also those like idiots who says that a demon king must be a disaster. Noah took out a shining parchment from his chest. Even if others call me the demon king, I can show everyone my authority as the organizer and tell them that I didn't abuse it. That's why my contract document isn't an ominous black. I haven't done anything wrong to anyone. Well said. Flood Dragon Lu praised loudly and raised his wine cup. For little brother Noah saying that your actions aren't wrong to anyone, I, Flood Dragon Lu, will toast you. You're right. Jialing also revealed a beautiful smile. Even if you're a demon king, we aren't wrong to anyone. We should drink this cup. Hearing this, White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest had a bitter expression that they couldn't say anything about. Unlike Noah, Flood Dragon Lu, and Jialing, White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest were existences that had truly fallen to become demon kings. They weren't demon kings appointed by the deities. Noah, Flood Dragon Lu, and Jialing's words were simply like sprinkling salt in the hearts of White Yaksha, Letitia, and Pest. Noah, who clearly saw the expressions of White Yaksha and the others, only then did he react and laugh embarrassedly. Sorry, I forgot about you guys. Everyone couldn't help but laugh out loud at his words. The banquet continued in a joyous and harmonious atmosphere. Chapter 16:11. In the end, the celebration banquet lasted until late at night. After the members of the community drank to their heart's content, the celebration banquet was announced to be over. Noah and the others also drank a lot. In the end, even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, and even Letitia and Pest collapsed. It took a lot of effort for Noah, 16 Nights, and Ren to send all the girls back to their rooms. As for Sarah, Flood Dragon, Jialing, and the others, they also drank until they were dead drunk. Thus, in the end, only Noah, White Yaksha, and 16th Night, who had good alcohol tolerance, as well as Ren and Sandora, who were not allowed to drink. Noah himself did not expect that he, who did not drink often, would have a good alcohol tolerance. Yasha had a good tolerance for alcohol because he had been nurtured for many years. As for 16 Nights, this guy also stood out in an unexpected field. He was really an existence that violated the rules. However, fortunately these guys were not drunk so they could clean up the mess. Otherwise, everyone would have to lie on the ground and sleep for the whole night and even until tomorrow. After sending everyone back to their respective rooms to rest, Ren and Sandora also returned to their own rooms to rest, looking exhausted. The remaining three, Noah, 16th Night, and White Yaksha, were still sitting around the messy round table, chatting with each other. The third perpetual motion machine? 16 Nights shook the wine glass in his hand and curled his lips. I thought the essence of the absolute evil spirit level should be a weapon of mass destruction that can destroy 1/3 of the planet's environment. Considering Az Dakaha's inheritance, it should be said that it is normal to think of this. Noah shrugged. However, that level can't be considered the end of humanity, right? After all, humans are also a very tenacious creature, White Yaksha said with a sigh. Times are changing and history is constantly changing. But no matter what, it is not easy for humans to survive. As the oldest person who had existed since the appearance of the universe, White Yaksha's words were more convincing than anyone else's. Also, unlike god spirits who can symbolize eternity, humans change all the time. Sometimes it's a good change and sometimes it's a bad change. Even god spirits can't predict what the future of humans will be like. White Yaksha looked at Noah and 16 Nights with deep meaning. Therefore, in the constant changes, the fragile humans in the eyes of others would occasionally produce some shocking characters. The two of you can be considered the best among them, right? If it's just outstanding talent, then I'll reluctantly accept it. 16th Nights looked at Noah with a faint smile. But compared to you, I can only be considered normal. Is it normal? Noah couldn't help but smile bitterly. If you're considered normal, then I should really appreciate the level of humans. After all, 16th Night's ability to break the rules was not normal. Although Noah could torture 16th Nights to death in minutes, if it was purely a competition of physical strength, 16th Nights was undoubtedly breaking the rules. Noah relied on ability points to increase his physical strength to the point where he could match 16th Knights. As for 16th Knights, not only did he reach a level that humans could not reach, he could even shatter a gift. If it wasn't for his lack of skill, it would be difficult to find an opponent that 16th Knights could not match among the 4-digit numbers. Under such circumstances, if 16th Knights was considered normal, then humans would really cry to death. Seriously, there are actually 2 humans like you and no name at the bottom of the 7-digit numbers? I really want to ask someone if this is a joke. White Yiksha shook his head with a smile, then his expression turned serious. But now that your community's flag has been recovered, and there are so many members with high-level abilities within your ranks, isn't it time to consider the matter of upgrading? Upgrading? Noah and 16th Knights were stunned at first, then they revealed interested expressions. What's wrong? 16th Knights teased. Is the ruler of the East District prepared to recommend us to a 6-digit number? To be more precise, if I only let no name rise to a 6-digit number, I would be underestimating you. White Yiksha suddenly smiled. So, I'm prepared to recommend you to a 5-digit number. This time Noah and 16th Knights were really shocked. 5-digit number? Noah said in extreme surprise. White Yiksha, that shouldn't be a level that the current no name can rise to, right? Although I'm very unwilling, I have the same idea, 16th Knights said slowly. After all, a 5-digit number and a 6-digit number, one is the middle level while the other is the lower level. The difficulty of upgrading is completely different. In the box, the community's ranking could not be upgraded just because they had several powerful individual members. Other than the lowest 7-digit number, every other level had its own requirements for upgrading. For example, in order to upgrade to a 6-digit number, one had to solve the test proposed by the ruler of the level. Another example was that in order to upgrade to a 5-digit number, more than 3 6-digit numbers had to be included in the sphere of influence. Flags had to be hung on these outer doors, and more than 100 community members had to participate in the bestowment game. From this, it could be seen the difference between a 5-digit number and a 6-digit number. If it was only a 6-digit number, as long as the community had members with sufficient ability, upgrading would not be a problem at all. But if it was a 5-digit number, not only did the community require a certain amount of power, but it also needed to guarantee the strength of the host. No matter what, although a 5-digit number was only the middle level, there were still God-level existences. If the community's power and strength could not be guaranteed, how could it be on the same level as God-level existences? Unfortunately, no name had no way to guarantee this. Even if it had members with high-level abilities in terms of power, no name was inferior to many 7-digit communities, not to mention that it did not have the resources and conditions to be the host and host the bestowment game. Therefore, White Yiksha's proposal had to be questioned by Noah and 16 Knights. In the face of Noah and 16 Knights' doubts, White Yiksha only raised the fan in his hand and covered the lower half of his face. His pair of eyes stared closely at Noah as he said this. But if there is a ruler of the level and no name, then it will be completely different, right? Ruler of the level? 16 Knights was stunned. Ruler of the level? Noah was also stunned, but then he reacted. White Yiksha, do you want to? That's right, kid. White Yiksha closed the fan in his hand with a snap and pointed the tip of the fan at Noah. I want you to replace me and become the new ruler of the East District. White Yiksha's words caused Noah's brows to furrow tightly. I see. 16 Knights was relieved, and his tone became somewhat ethereal. Are you ready to leave? White Yiksha. There's no other way. After returning the godhood and retrieving the power of my peak, I can't stay in the lower realm, White Yiksha sighed. Because of the incident with Az Dakaha, I've been stuck here until now. Now that the humans have been suppressed in the final trial, it won't be long before I have to return to the upper echelons of more than 3 digits. Under such circumstances, you have to choose a qualified successor, right? 16 Knights laughed unrestrainedly. And in the East District, there's no one more suitable than you to become the ruler of the level. Yes. White Yiksha looked at Noah with a serious expression. Now, your reputation is like the sun in the sky. Not only do you have sovereignty over all 24 suns, even the millions of gods in the heaven realm can't do anything to you. This is something that the entire box court already knows. No one will object to you inheriting my position. Noah immediately fell silent. Chapter 16:12. That was true. With Noah's current reputation and strength, if he inherited White Yiksha's position and became the ruler of the hierarchy, not only would the people in the East District not object, but they would also raise both hands in approval. The ruler of the hierarchy was the guardian of order. Although they had some rights, the main purpose of the ruler of the hierarchy was to maintain order and protect the safety of the residents of the box court. If they were faced with a disaster that endangered the box court, the ruler of the hierarchy would have to step forward bravely. Under such circumstances, Noah's position as the leader of the succession hierarchy would definitely be welcomed. After all, no one would want to be protected by someone who was too weak. As for Noah, not only was his reputation at its peak, but he was also a great hero who had suppressed 3 digits of humans in the final trial. He was an existence who could seal 1,000,000 gods and slaughter hundreds of gods. With such a person protecting them, why would the East District worry about not being safe? Therefore, no one would object to Noah inheriting the position of ruler of the East District. As for those who deliberately caused trouble, which brainless person would find fault with someone who had slaughtered hundreds of gods? Moreover, as the predecessor, I only held more than half of the 14 sons, but you held all 24 sons. This fact will give others the feeling that you are better than me. There will definitely be no problem for you to inherit my position. As he said this, Bayasha smiled helplessly. Not to mention that you are better than me. That's not a feeling but a fact. Regardless of the sovereignty of all 24 sons, Noah is a person who even holds the another cosmology, which is more than 3 digits above the Hakoni. Moreover, there was more than one another cosmology. You have the another cosmology that you inherited from the Star Sea Dragon King and the 3-headed demonic dragon. Even if I were to face those two another cosmology, I wouldn't have any chance of winning. White Yaksha openly admitted. Just based on this point, you can proudly sit in the position of the ruler of the East District. The virtual star Taisue's simulated star map, another cosmology, could unconditionally seal the strongest kind of gods and star spirits. To the White Yaksha, who was the sun star spirit, this another cosmology was like a natural enemy that he could not compete with. Avesta's another cosmology could imitate the cosmology of humans and fire worship sect. It could obtain all the abilities of the individual with the cosmology, and it could also turn it into a mirror to counteract the power of the cosmology. Against this, another cosmology, White Yaksha was just nourishment. While it made the enemy stronger than him, it also made his power completely ineffective. He had no chance of winning at all. With these two, another cosmology, Noah really couldn't find an opponent in the box. Other than humans and fire worship sect's gods, it was impossible for anyone to defeat Noah. Even when facing the fire worship sect's gods, Noah could use another cosmology to weaken the other party's spiritual lattice or even seal it directly. In addition, Noah's power was comparable to that of a Lord God. Which human or god whose spiritual lattice was halved could defeat him? Not to mention, if Noah went all out and disregarded the burden on his body, he could even use the power of 4 incarnations at the same time for a certain period of time to reach a 2-digit level. In this way, who could be Noah's opponent? White Yaksha could not. Halloween Queen could not either. Except for the illusory 1-digit number that even its existence could not be confirmed, Noah already had the ability to truly dominate in the box court. As a ruler of the hierarchy, there was no more suitable existence than Noah. If Noah became the ruler of the hierarchy, then there was no reason for the community of the ruler of the hierarchy to only stay in the 6-digit number, right? At that time, no name where Noah was would be allowed to be promoted to a 5-digit number. It was not impossible to succeed. This is indeed an opportunity. 16th Night spread his hands and said to Noah very casually, "Little brother, I think you can consider it. Please." White Yaksha made a very sincere request. Sarah in the Southern District has just become the leader of the upper echelons, so there are many things that she can't do at the same time. Sandra in the Northern District is still too young and immature. Also, they are only in the 5 digits. It's fine for them to face some small disasters, but it's too dangerous for them to face a big disaster like this, or a situation like last time where several districts were attacked at the same time. In view of this, among the rulers of the hierarchy, there must be someone who can pick up the big picture at a critical time and has powerful abilities, White Yaksha said to Noah solemnly. Although there are still some candidates for such a person, among them the most suitable is undoubtedly you. If you inherit my position, then I can really rest assured. Noah understood what White Yaksha meant. In fact, White Yaksha did not know that the Avesta that Noah inherited from Az Dakaha was more or less different from what she knew. To be precise, it should be said that because the person using it was different, the target of this Avesta was a little different. If Az Dakaha were to use Avesta, he could imitate all universes except for the human and Zoroastrianism universes. However, if Noah used Avesta, other than humans, he could even imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. The reason was because Avesta, another cosmology, was special. This simulated star map, another cosmology, contained the fire worship sect's dualism of good and evil. As the evil god of the fire worship sect, when Azh-Dakaha used Avesta, it would be classified as the evil god of good and evil. Therefore he would use it. In the fire worship sect's teachings, evil existed to show the existence of good. Naturally, as an evil god who was suppressed by good, when Azh-Dakaha was positioned as evil, he was destined to be unable to imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. However, Noah was different. When Noah used Avesta, he was positioned as the good side. The good camp suppressing the evil camp was a very important part of the fire worship sect's mythology. For example, Welslana was an evil god who had suppressed countless evil camps. He was an undefeated military god. Therefore, when Noah was positioned as the good side when he used Avesta, he could imitate the fire worship sect's cosmology. In other words, only the human cosmology was not within the scope of this another cosmology. Without relying on illusory star Taisui, Noah was almost invincible just by relying on Avesta. There was no reason why Noah could not be the leader of the hierarchy. However, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. This was because Noah could not stay in this world forever. Now that Azh-Dakaha had been suppressed, Noah was ready to leave this world. Noah felt that there were some things that he should verify. Therefore, Noah did not really want to inherit the position of the leader of the hierarchy. You don't have to make a decision immediately. White Yaksha seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and changed the topic. Think about it carefully before giving me a reply. Noah could only nod. Chapter 16:13. Successor to the ruler of the stratum? The next day in the Hall of No Name's base, Noah took advantage of the time when everyone was eating breakfast to tell everyone about this matter. Immediately, everyone present cried out in surprise. Wah! Wah 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 wah. Black Rabbit immediately panicked. It seems like something incredible has happened. That's right. Ren was also a little flustered. Moreover, the community will be recommended to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Isn't this a little too sudden? Or rather, is this really okay? Flying Bird was not as panicked as Black Rabbit and Ren, and asked doubtfully. Although we have already found the flag, our community is still a no name, without a name. Let's not talk about whether or not the promotion to a 5-digit number will work. Let's talk about the ruler of the stratum. Is that something that a member of no name can succeed? I don't think there's any problem, Letitia said. Now, almost everyone in the box knows about Master's ability. Even if he belongs to a member of no name, no one will object, right? And if it's promoted to a 5-digit number, then it's even less of a problem. Pest continued Letitia's words. Let's not talk about the appearance of a successor to the stratum ruler in the community. Just based on the performance of no name in this battle, there's no doubt that they should get first place. As a reward, it's not impossible for them to be promoted to a 5-digit number. Right now, I'm more concerned about whether or not no name can get back their 5-digit and 6-digit number assets. 16th Night knocked on the table. Before they were reduced to no name, this community was the largest power in the East District. Naturally, they had their own sphere of influence in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers. If we can get back those assets, then we can shout, "Long live!" 3 times. Wasn't the property taken away by the Demon King Alliance? Yao asked curiously. Can they be taken back? There are still some things that can't be taken away. Ren finally calmed down a little and replied. For example, the land. The land that no name held in the 5-digit and 6-digit numbers should still be there. Land? Flying Bird slightly raised her eyebrows. Don't tell me that it's been abandoned like the land in our base? Our community's 5-digit and 6-digit lands are basically some mineral veins and oil fields, Black Rabbit explained to Flying Bird. Mineral veins and oil fields are not as easily abandoned as farmlands and pastures, so those lands should still be intact. That's good. If that's the case, we won't have no confidence when we reach 5 digits. 16th Night laughed. If those mineral veins and oil fields are worth mining, the wealth of our community should instantly increase by a lot. It's not impossible for us to become the host of this event. Now that the flag has been reclaimed, Our community's reputation has been raised to the peak because of Master's existence. If we take advantage of this time to develop, we should be able to make the community a true 5-digit number in about a year. Letitia smiled sweetly. Restoring the past glory of the community is no longer a dream, everyone. Letitia's words made a smile appear on the faces of everyone present. Their mood more or less became a little high. Wait a minute. You've misunderstood the main point, Noah hurriedly shouted for them to stop. Although your ideas can't be said to be wrong, they are all built on the condition that I become the Stratum ruler. If I can't become the Stratum ruler, then no name, naturally won't be able to reach 5 digits. All of these guesses will be nothing, right? Everyone was slightly startled and looked at each other. In other words, Pest asked with uncertainty. You don't want to become the Stratum ruler? Everyone present cast their gazes on Noah, their eyes filled with hope, expectation, and unease. There was no helping it. Noah's decision would determine whether or not No Name could regain its past glory and become the largest faction in the East District once again. Thus, let alone Black Rabbit, Letitia, Ren, and the other old members, even 16th Night Flying Bird, and Yao hoped that Noah could become the Stratum ruler. Under the gazes of the crowd that were full of hope, expectation, and uneasiness, Noah's expression suddenly became awkward. Seeing this, everyone understood Noah's decision. What? Yao asked in a confused manner. Isn't it very cool to become the Stratum ruler? Whether or not it's cool is secondary, Noah said in a somewhat speechless manner. The problem is, even if I become the Stratum ruler, I won't have the time to complete my duties as the Stratum ruler. No time? Everyone was immediately confused. Seeing this, Noah hesitated for a moment before saying, I have my own matters to deal with as well. I also have my own things to deal with. Maybe after a while I will leave boxing. Right? Leave the box court? Everyone was surprised. Master, you plan to leave the box court? Letitia frowned. What? Pest did not say anything. Instead, she stared closely at Noah, a trace of anxiety appearing in her eyes. Clearly seeing the anxiety in Pest's eyes, Noah seemed to have read Pest's thoughts. He extended his hand and patted Pest's head. Rest assured, I will only leave after I'm done with your matters. Only then did the anxiety in Pest's eyes disappear. However, it was soon replaced by confusion. Evidently, Pest also did not understand why Noah wanted to leave the box court. I also have my own reasons, Noah laughed bitterly. Well, if nothing unexpected happens, we will be able to meet in a month's time, right? Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Since it's only a month's time, there shouldn't be any major problems, right? Letitia looked at Noah with her deep red eyes. If that's the case, why don't you become the Stratum ruler? Even if it's only a month's time, it will still become a problem, no? Noah spoke helplessly. Could it be that you all think that it won't become a problem if the Stratum ruler is not in power for a month? That was true. Ignoring everything else, if the Demon King were to suddenly attack during this 1 month's time, if the Stratum ruler was not in power, how would they face the Demon King? Could it be that they were to allow the Demon King to wreak havoc and wait until a month's time to deal with it? At that time, who knew how much damage would be done to the Eastern District? Moreover, the Stratum ruler's job was far from just fighting against the Demon King. For example, some illegal activities and organizations that were harmful to the order of the Eastern District needed to be banned. Additionally, the setting of the usage fees for every outer sect gate, the approval of the Eastern District's community's promotion application, the creation of the promotion trial, the decision of the Game of Grace held periodically by the Eastern District and so on, all of these tasks required the Stratum ruler to complete. Once the Stratum ruler was no longer in power, who knew how chaotic the entire district would become? Noah did not want to become an irresponsible person. Thus, if he wanted to become the Stratum ruler, he must consider the issue of fulfilling his duties. At the very least, if he could not solve this problem during the 1 month's time, Noah would not agree to become the Stratum ruler. So that's how it is, Letitia nodded and suddenly said. If that's the case, Master can be at ease. With me here, let alone 1 month's time, no matter how long it takes, it won't be a problem. What? Noah was stunned. Master, did you forget? Letitia looked at Noah reproachfully, raised her head and puffed out her chest, one hand pressed against her chest and said proudly. Even if I'm only a little maid under Master's command now, in the past, I was once a Stratum ruler with full power. It's just a Stratum ruler's job, let me carry it out, it's not a difficult thing. Letitia's words woke him up from his dream. That's right, that's right. Black Rabbit happily clapped his hands. No matter what, Master Letitia is the owner of a 4-digit divine spark, and also the owner of the sun of Ophiuchus constellation. Carrying out the Stratum ruler's job is not a problem at all. That's right, Letitia smiled and said to Noah. So, Master, you can rest assured and do your own things. The Stratum ruler's job, let me carry it out on your behalf. Hearing this, Noah muttered to himself. After a while, Noah finally made his decision. You agreed? In one of the rooms in the throne hall, White Yaksha looked at Noah with surprise. Yesterday night, when he saw Noah hesitating and being in a difficult position, White Yaksha thought that Noah would not agree to this matter. Now that the situation had taken a turn, with Noah taking over the Stratum ruler's position, the safety of the lower realm could basically rest easy. That's great. White Yaksha happily stood up. Since that's the case, there's no time to lose. I'll announce this matter now. Before that, I might leave for a period of time. In the period that I'm not around, my job will be temporarily taken over by Letitia, Noah said directly. As for the Stratum ruler's appointment, wait until I help Pest to fulfill her wish. Pest's wish? White Yaksha's face suddenly froze. Immediately, after being silent for a while, he looked at Noah with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Can you tell me about this matter? Chapter 16:14. Originally, Noah had only casually mentioned Pest's matter. However, seeing White Yaksha's unprecedentedly serious expression, Noah immediately sensed that something was amiss. Then Noah's heart skipped a beat. Thinking about it carefully, Pest had also said that the reason why the Black Death was prevalent was because someone had used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's periodic activity. As an existence who held more than half of the sun's sovereignty in the past, it was impossible for White Yaksha to not know the inside story, right? Thus, Noah looked at White Yaksha with a thoughtful look in his eyes. White Yaksha, do you know something? White Yaksha immediately fell silent. Noah wasn't in a hurry as he quietly waited for White Yaksha's reaction. Not long after, White Yaksha suddenly spoke. If you're referring to something related to the Demon King of the Black Death, then I do know something that has a lot to do with it. Noah narrowed his eyes slightly. Looking at Noah, White Yaksha said, Do you know what's wrong? Do you know about dystopia? Dystopia? Noah was stunned. Utopia. It referred to the concept of utopia, which was considered the most beautiful society in human thought. In this concept, it was generally believed that all citizens should obtain an equal income, build a residence without differences, and turn everything into an equal existence, living every day without distinction between good and bad. In such a society, brilliant gems should have the same value as dull stones, and resources should be equalized. The term price didn't exist, and one could get as many resources as they wanted. Therefore, there was no struggle between people there, and they lived an absolutely equal life. Dystopia, on the other hand, was the opposite of an ideal world like utopia. It meant that utopia was actually a place filled with ugliness and misfortune. That was because in such a place, the so-called rarity didn't exist, and it wouldn't nurture independence. Living in such a society, although there was no struggle, discrimination, or epidemic, living the same life every day, every month, every second was the greatest torture and even misfortune. Therefore, in this kind of society, although it was peaceful on the surface, it was filled with all kinds of uncontrollable evils. In this society where material civilization was rampant and higher than spiritual civilization, the human spirit was extremely dependent on material. The human spirit did not have true freedom in a highly developed technological society. However, that was to be expected. If everything became equal in terms of resources, then people would no longer need to work tirelessly for the sake of resources. That sounded good, but it was only a superficial increase in the standard of living of humans. After all, not needing to run around and be tired meant that humans would lose the meaning of working hard. Every day they would be like walking corpses without any meaning. Therefore, utopia would lead to the loss of human freedom, the spread of material waste, the decline of morality, the oppression of democracy, the rampant class system, the rampant suicidal atmosphere, and so on. In the end, it would lead humans to destruction. This was the idea of a dystopian society. Noah still possessed this level of knowledge. However, Noah was still stunned. This was because Noah did not know why White Yaksha would suddenly mention dystopia here. What? You didn't realize? White Yaksha smiled bitterly. Dystopia is an idea that will lead humans to destruction. As the factor that will lead to the end of humanity, it should be enough, right? His words jolted Noah's spirit. The factor that will lead to the end of humanity? Wasn't that, That's right, it's the final trial of humanity. White Yiksha's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. In the past, there was a final trial of humanity created by the personification of dystopian ideas in the box court. It was called the Demon King of the Closed World. Noah had also heard of this matter, but he had not realized it before. No matter what, Noah did not expect that the topic of pest would be related to the final trial of humanity. Frowning, Noah said with some uncertainty, "I remember. It was the final trial of humanity that turned the entire West District of the Box Court into a dystopian world. The people and livestock born and raised in the West District would slowly lose their lives over time. In the end, they would even become non-existent. Even the faith of the gods would be weakened and the existence of the gods would be completely wiped out, right?" "Yes." White Yiksha nodded. "Therefore, in terms of the nature of the God Slayer, the Demon King of the dystopian world is even worse than Az Dakaha. It was because of the influence of dystopia that the West District did not participate in the battle against Az Dakaha. The West District's class rulers also did not appear. But that Demon King seems to have been defeated, right?" Noah asked. "Why are you mentioning him here?" "Yes. The Demon King of the dystopian world had been defeated. Moreover, it was defeated by the great alliance of class rulers formed by the community Noah was in before it was reduced to no name." Why would White Yiksha suddenly mention the Demon King of the dystopian world? White Yiksha seemed to know Noah's question and couldn't help but sigh. "Then do you know how the Demon King of the dystopian world was defeated?" As for this, Noah didn't know anything. Although he found records about the Demon King of the dystopian world in the library of No Name, there was no detailed description of how the Demon King was defeated. Rather, even the matter of the Demon King of the dystopian world being defeated by the great alliance of class rulers led by the predecessor of No Name, was not recorded in the books in the library. Noah learned about it from Letitia. Now White Yiksha brought up this issue. Noah suddenly had a bad feeling. Under such circumstances, White Yiksha began to explain. "You should also know that in human history originally, the liberation of serfs was delayed until the early 1900s. As a result, it hindered the development of enlightenment and liberalism, right?" Noah nodded with a heavy heart. Seeing Noah like this, White Yiksha sighed again. "But you don't know that in the trajectory of human history, if enlightenment and liberalism are hindered, it will become the reason for the growth of dystopian ideas." Hearing this, Noah knew what had happened. The ominous premonition in his heart had come true. The Demon King's closed world is the personification of dystopian ideas. Therefore, the appearance of dystopian ideas is the reason for the birth of this human's final trial, White Yiksha said as if he couldn't bear it. In order to defeat this Demon King in the past, led by the great alliance of class rulers who resisted the Demon King's dystopia, the people who challenged the closed world used the sun's sovereignty to change the sun's activity. This allowed the Black Death to spread from the 14th century and lasted for more than 100 years. In the end, it allowed the social status of serfs to rise ahead of time, promoting the development of enlightenment and liberalism, preventing the appearance of dystopian ideas, thus interrupting the connection to the future of the closed world, and making the Demon King of the dystopian world disappear. In other words, the Black Death's pandemic was promoted in order to defeat the Demon King's closed world. And the people who promoted this matter were part of the great alliance of class rulers led by No Name's predecessor. The target of Pest's revenge was not the sun. Instead, it was everyone in the great alliance of class rulers in the past, including No Name. Do you understand why I'm so concerned about Pest's wish? White Yiksha looked straight at Noah. Although this is only my conjecture, if the wish of that little girl who is responsible for the deaths of 80 million people is to prevent the Black Death from occurring, then human history will return to the path of promoting dystopian ideologies. At that time, the history of the Black Death will be erased, and the Demon King's closed world will be revived. The entire closed world will once again face the threat of the human's final trial. White Yiksha said extremely solemnly. "Kid, you have to think carefully before you act." Noah's expression finally sank. Chapter 16:15. Pest, who did not know what Noah and White Yiksha were talking about, was currently together with the members of No Name. They were gathered in the main hall, discussing the matter of the ruler of the hierarchy. To be more precise, No Name and the others were excitedly chatting about how Noah would soon become the ruler of the upper class. Pest was merely looking at this scene with a bored expression. Actually, Pest herself was surprised by Noah becoming the ruler of the upper echelons. Yet she also felt that it was only natural. She was surprised because she did not expect that as an original demon king, there would be a day when she would become the ruler of the hierarchy. Naturally, it was like what White Yaksha and 16th Night said before. After White Yaksha abdicated, there was no one more suitable than Noah to become the ruler of the hierarchy in the entire East District. No matter what, the current Noah already possessed the ability to become the overlord of the entire box court. In terms of combat strength, Noah was already in existence on par with White Yaksha and the Queen of All Saints level. Not to mention, Noah also possessed all 24 sovereign sons and another cosmology. Even Pest had no choice but to admit this. The current Noah had already grown to a level that surpassed her imagination. Although she had always felt that Noah possessed limitless possibilities and would definitely occupy a place in the box court in the future, Pest did not expect that this day would actually come so quickly. However, Pest had no reason to be unhappy. That was because, with the current Noah's ability, accomplishing his wish was something that could be done with a wave of his hand. As for the consequences of erasing the history of the Black Death, Pest no longer had to worry about it. After all, the matter of Noah massacring all the gods of over 100 god groups had already spread throughout the entire box court. With this, which idiot would dare to cause trouble for Noah? If the history of the Black Death was erased, the interests of a portion of the god groups and demon kings would indeed be affected. However, before Noah's frightening battle achievements, those fellows would most likely not dare to voice their anger. Thus, Pest's mood could be said to be very relaxed. At first, I thought this wish was almost impossible to realize. To the previous Pest, becoming enemies with a group of gods and demon kings was no different from courting death. Because of that, the desire to eliminate the Black Death had always been a very heavy desire in Pest's heart. However, ever since she met Noah, Pest's situation changed completely. Perhaps this is also a matter of fate. Pest no longer had any complaints toward her master, Noah. In fact, after the day Pest poured out her wish to Noah, she had already made a vow in her heart. Since you have shouldered all of my burden, then I will also strive to become an indispensable existence by your side. With this determination in mind, Pest accepted Athena's training. The reason why Pest was able to reach 4 digits in level in a short month was because she still had a lot of potential that could be developed. It was also because of her determination. To put it bluntly, the current Pest no longer had any disloyalty toward Noah. Although what I possess is only determination, it cannot compare to the loyalty of my colleagues. With that thought in mind, Pest turned around and looked in Letitia's direction. There, Letitia was listening to Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit and the others' excited conversation with a smile on her face. At this moment, Flying Bird, Light, Black Rabbit and the others were, without a doubt, talking about Noah. They were talking about how Noah had become the ruler of the upper echelon, how he had allowed Known May to reach 5 digits in level, how he had managed to retrieve all of his past wealth, and how he would be able to recover his past glory in a short period of time. While they were happily discussing this, they were also praising Noah for his contributions and achievements. Hearing these praises and admiration for Noah, Letitia felt happy from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps even Letitia herself did not notice this. If someone were to give a good evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel very happy. If someone were to give a bad evaluation of Noah, Letitia would feel extremely dissatisfied. Evidently, this purebred vampire was sincerely proud of her master's achievements and abilities. She had placed all of her heart and soul on Noah. Compared to Letitia, Pest felt that her determination was inferior. This caused Pest to feel extremely displeased. What's so great about that? Sooner or later, I will also have such loyalty toward my master. Pest did not notice that her thoughts were very close to jealousy. Letitia was able to place all of her heart and soul on Noah, dedicating her heart and soul to Noah. Pest, who was unable to do the same, was feeling jealous. I am also master's subordinate. Feeling that she had lost to Letitia, Pest glared at Letitia with an extremely unreconciled expression. Amen? Letitia seemed to have sensed something strange. She turned her head around and looked in Pest's direction. When she saw Pest glaring fiercely at her, she was involuntarily startled. She spoke in a suspicious manner. What's wrong, Pest? It's nothing. Pest turned her head away as if she was throwing a tantrum. I just wanted to tell you, Letitia, my strength is already in the 4 digits now. I'm not inferior to you. Letitia's beautiful brows were slightly raised. As if she had seen through the unreconciled and jealous feelings in Pest's heart, she said with a smile that was not a smile. However, strength does not mean everything. Rather than comparing the disparity between your battle power and mine, Why don't you think about how to brew black tea, iron your clothes and hone your ability to do housework? That would be of great help to your master. Woo! Pest was immediately rendered speechless as if her weak point had been poked. Facing this, Letitia merely looked at Pest with a joyous expression. This caused Pest to feel a sense of superiority. The corners of her mouth started twitching. Aren't you just a bit more adorable than me, a bit more powerful than me, a bit more knowledgeable than me, a bit more likable than me, and a bit more doted on by that guy than me? What's there to be arrogant about? Just as Letitia and Pest were carrying out an unknown comparison between maids, Noah finally returned. Noah's appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. Mr. Noah. Black Rabbit's rabbit ears twitched slightly. Just as she was about to pounce toward Noah and ask about the progress of the matter, she suddenly stopped and shut her mouth. It was not only Black Rabbit. The others also subconsciously stopped talking. This caused the entire Hall of No Name to become deathly silent. There was only a single reason for such a situation to occur. That was Noah's brows were deeply furrowed. An undissolvable sorrow could be seen between his brows. Seeing Noah in such a state, for some unknown reason, Pest's mood became somewhat restless. Master? Letitia spoke in confusion. Did something happen? Only after entering the hall did Noah raise his head. His gaze swept past the faces of his little companions. In the end, his gaze was fixed on Pest. The anxiety in Pest's heart immediately grew even stronger. This caused her tone to become somewhat uneasy. What's wrong? Sensing Pest's uneasiness, Noah laughed bitterly. He took a deep breath and patted his cheeks to pull himself together. My apologies, Pest. There is something that I wish to discuss with you first. Pest immediately sensed that this matter was not simple. At the same time, she also understood that this matter was greatly related to her. Thus, she could only nod her head. Soon after, before the confused gazes of the crowd, Noah and Pest entered the room. An hour later, Noah and Pest came out from the room. Although they did not know what Noah and Pest were talking about, Pest's eyes were red after coming out from the room. There were even traces of tears on her young and tender face. It was clear that she had cried. This caused the crowd to be extremely shocked. Of course, that was not the most important thing. What truly caused an uproar was a matter that Noah announced after that. Chapter 16:16. Defeating Aziz Dakaha was only yesterday. During the celebration banquet last night, almost everyone in the vampire's castle drank until they were dead drunk. Even after waking up the next day, they were still full of joy. However, the matter of the humans' final trial was already over. Next, the various communities in the vampire's castle would have to return to their respective bases. Therefore, although the joy in their hearts did not disappear, the wise leaders of the communities had already begun to plan with their companions how to deal with the aftermath and develop after returning. Before Noah's return, the various communities in the vampire's castle had formed an alliance army and challenged Az Dakaha. That battle, compared to the previous day, was really too tragic. Almost every community had casualties and losses. After that, although under the leadership of Sarah and Shadora, the communities jointly held a memorial service to let the dead rest in peace, the casualties still caused these communities to suffer losses in the end. In order to make up for these comrades who had died bravely in battle, many communities had to start thinking about recruiting people. Of course, this was no longer a difficult thing to do. This was because the communities that had participated in Az Dakaha's battle had now become one of the hottest topics in people's mouths. Although it was not as outrageous as Noah's, the reputation of the communities that had participated in the battle had also increased. It was believed that with this point alone, these communities would be able to make a name for themselves, recruit good members, and even expand their forces and develop in all aspects, right? With the fact and merit of participating in the battle against the humans' final trial, there were even some communities in the vampire's castle that were prepared to submit an application to the ruler of the hierarchy to be promoted to a higher level. Therefore, the loss of the communities was only temporary. Soon, the communities that had participated in the battle against Az Dakaha would recover to their former level and expand further, right? It was precisely because of this benefit that many communities came to participate in the battle. After all, not all communities had the resolve to protect everyone in the box from the hands of the Demon King. Among the communities that came to participate in the battle, some were doing it in the name of righteousness, some were doing it for the sake of this merit, and some even just wanted to gain merit. However, no matter what the reason was, these communities did not hesitate to fight with their lives on the line. They had fought bravely until now. This was a fact that had to be acknowledged. Therefore, people still had to acknowledge the meritorious officials. However, at this critical juncture, a shocking piece of news began to spread throughout the vampire's castle. Have you heard? Lord Noah's no name was preparing to head to the Western District. Crusade against another human in the final trial. Wow, what? Are you kidding me? Weren't all the humans defeated in the final trial? That's right. Undoubtedly Azh-Dakaha is the last human in the final trial, right? Who's talking nonsense over there? No name will head to the Western District and crusade against another human in the final trial. The news spread like wildfire. Nobody knew when it started, but it had spread throughout the entire castle of vampires. It even went out of the castle and set off an uproar in the entire courtyard. That was to be expected. It must be known that the humans in the final trial were given the title of God Slayer. They could even wipe out the gods in the heavenly realm. The entire courtyard would be shaken, threatening the existence of the entire human history. Although there had been many such existences in the past, Azh-Dakaha was the last one to do so. Now that Azh-Dakaha had been defeated, where did another human in the final trial come from? Could it be that after the fall of the three-headed dragon, another element of destruction had appeared in human history, giving birth to a new human in the final trial? For a moment, there was a lot of talk, causing those communities that were preparing to set off and return to their bases to start developing to have no choice but to give up on their plans and prepare to investigate the truth. Thus, the leaders of the communities all headed towards the direction of the throne hall, intending to find a group of rulers and ask them what was going on. As a result, the entire minister's seat hall was completely surrounded. After that, Noah personally came out of the throne hall and admitted to this matter in front of everyone. After Noah admitted to the truth of this matter, White Yaksha, Sarah, and Shadora also came out of the throne hall and announced that as the rulers of the eastern, southern, and northern regions, they would fully support No Name and head to the Western District to defeat the humans in the final trial. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire castle of vampires was in an uproar. The entire courtyard was also in an uproar. All the communities that were preparing to return to their bases could only give up on the plans in their hearts. After a day of buffer, the next day, all the communities that were still in Castle of Vampires all volunteered to follow Noah and the others to the Western District to deal with the humans in the final trial. Regarding this, Noah personally came out again and solemnly thanked everyone. He also announced that after the Demon King of the dystopia was defeated, he would take over the position of White Yaksha and become the ruler of the Eastern District. This news caused the entire courtyard to be in an uproar again. Especially the people in the Eastern District, after knowing that Noah was about to become the ruler of the Eastern District, they were all overjoyed. Compared to these two matters, the announcement of other trivial matters became less eye-catching. For example, as the community of the rulers of the Eastern District, the matter of No Name being promoted to a 5-digit number became commonplace. Moreover, many communities were also promoted by the rulers of the Eastern District. The matter of them being promoted also did not become too eye-catching. Among these matters, there were only two things worth mentioning. 1. The community of Will-O-Wisp, who was known as the strongest demon in the Northern District, would migrate to the Eastern District and form an alliance with No Name to develop together. 2. The communities that belonged to the many god groups in the heavenly realm who had been avoiding battle all began to gather in Castle of Vampires. They voluntarily volunteered and expressed their willingness to work with No Name to fight the dystopia Demon King in the Western District. Obviously, this time, the gods in the heavenly realm had completely dispelled the idea of abandoning the courtyard and were ready to stand on the same front as Noah. This approach had the intention of easing the relationship between them, and also the intention of using the battle with the dystopian Demon King to wash away the previous stigma. Under such circumstances, the various conflicts between the Alliance Army and the God Group Army in Castle of Vampires would be a story for later. And when the entire courtyard was in an uproar, finally, the news of the final trial of humans in the Western District began to be confirmed. 3 days later, with No Name as the leader, all the communities that gathered in Castle of Vampires began to move towards the Western District. As a result, the battle with the dystopia Demon King lasted for nearly a month. A month later, Noah single-handedly defeated the dystopia Demon King and killed him with his own hands. Finally, peace was restored to the entire courtyard. In the battle with the dystopia Demon King, because Noah took the lead, there were miraculously no casualties. It would be better to say that in order not to let his decision kill innocent bystanders, Noah tried his best to avoid casualties, which led to this result. After killing the dystopia Demon King, Noah returned to the Eastern District and officially took over the position of the ruler of the hierarchy from White Yeksha, becoming the guardian of order in the Eastern District. In this way, White Yeksha finally unloaded a heavy burden and prepared to go to the heavenly realm. In order to reward White Yeksha, who had been the ruler of the hierarchy for a long time and had done his best for the Eastern District, Noah held a farewell party. Lord Noah. Lord Noah. At the scene of the farewell party, as soon as Noah entered the venue, he was immediately welcomed by everyone. Flood Dragon Lu saw Noah from afar, raised his hand and shouted at Noah. Little brother Noah. Over here. Seeing this, Noah suddenly smiled, raised his feet and walked over. Chapter 16-17. The location of the farewell party was naturally in the Eastern District. Moreover, it was in an outer sect in the Eastern District that was rated as having the most beautiful environment. It was an area where cherry blossoms would unbelievably bloom all year long. Noah spent his own money and rented an entire piece of land in a corner of this area to hold the banquet. The races from the Eastern District, Southern District, Northern District, and even the Western District all came to attend the banquet. Orcs, mirage beasts, elves, demons and even Rakshasa. All the races from the 4 districts of Box Court had come to the scene. They surrounded the cloth mats that were spread directly on the lawn that was full of cherry blossom trees. They enjoyed good wine and good food while chatting and laughing. Noah responded to everyone's greetings as he walked past the seats and came to where Jiao Lu was. Other than Jiao Lu, there were also Jialing, 16 Knights, Sarah and Shadora. Sarah and Shadora are here too? Noah greeted Sarah and Shadora and then looked at 16 Knights with a helpless smile. I was wondering where you went. So you've been here for a long time? After all, we're not as busy as the ruler of the hierarchy. If we came early, we could have encountered many good things, right? 16 Knights showed a provocative expression and shrugged. In fact, there were many good things. Now, we're listening to 2 of the 7 days of the legend of bravery with the gods in the heaven realm. Compared with what little brother Noah has done in the past 2 months, what we have done is nothing. Lu Jiao said with a wry smile. Little brother 16th Knight, why did you have to mention this in front of little brother Noah? Aren't you just trying to embarrass us? So it turns out that the renowned Rock Demon King actually still cares about this sort of thing? 16th Knight laughed loudly. Don't mind it. I can guarantee that it's not that your legend of bravery isn't good enough. It's just that little brother broke the rules too much and can't be compared to him. What do you mean I broke the rules too much? Noah sat down under Sarah and Shadora's greeting. He picked up a glass of wine and said in an annoyed tone. The 7-day war back then was said to have split the entire Hakata into 2. Compared to that, what I'm doing is just a small matter, right? A small fight. Jialing said in a coquettish manner. If what you've done in the past 2 months is just a small matter, then we really don't have the face to see anyone. That's right. Jiao Lu echoed. Who can be like little brother Noah, single-handedly killing 2 humans in the final trial, sealing 1,000,000 deities, slaughtering all the deities of over 100 deities, and gathering the sovereignty of all 24 sons. Not to mention, you've also gained the approval of absolute evil, and been entrusted with Avesta's another cosmology, Jialing said with a hint of delight. I clearly remember when you used Avesta's another cosmology in the battle against the dystopian demon king, the expressions of the deities under the command of the deities. Jiao Lu, 16 Knights, Sarah and Shadora all smiled when Jialing mentioned it. Even Noah couldn't help but smile. Compared to absolute evil, the demon king who had the title of Closed World, was definitely stronger, not weaker. When dealing with the 3-headed dragon because of the 3-headed dragons, another cosmology, Noah's, another cosmology, was of no use at all. However, when dealing with the dystopia, Noah's 2 another cosmology finally came in handy. With the having effect of illusory star Tai Sui on Ling and the imitation effect of Avesta, Noah fully utilized the power of the 2 another cosmology in the battle against the dystopia, weakening the enemy and strengthening himself. However, the dystopia demon king was still a human in the final trial, and there was indeed an extremely tricky part. Not to mention other things because the demon king's nature as a god slayer was more against the rules than the 3-headed dragon. At the beginning of the battle, Noah's authority was completely restrained, and he almost failed miserably. Fortunately, Noah's authority had long since transformed into his own power under his own constitution, and it was no longer the power of a god. To a certain extent, he was no longer restricted by the dystopia demon king. Under the power of this demon king that could even weaken the faith of a god, if it were any other god other than Noah, not to mention using their power they might even be instantly killed, right? Because of this, Pest, a 4-digit death god, did not even dare to enter the battlefield. She hid in the rear and was responsible for providing support. Needless to say, she was very sullen. In the end, even Noah was forced to use both of his another cosmology. Only then was he able to turn the tables on the Dystopia Demon King. Even so, the Dystopia Demon King still managed to last for an entire month before being killed. From this, it could be seen that the human in the final trial was definitely not much weaker than the 3-headed dragon. Other than Noah, there was probably no one else in the entire box who could fight the Dystopia Demon King one-on-one. After this battle, the matter of Noah obtaining Avesta was completely exposed. The expressions of the communities under the command of the gods of the celestial realms were very interesting. Thinking up to this point, Noah looked at Jiao Lu, Jiao Ling, Sarah and Shadora and said very solemnly, "Thank you very much, everyone." Everyone present knew the inside story of why Noah would go up against the Dystopia Demon King. After explaining everything to Pest and making the decision to fulfill Pest's wish of reviving the Dystopia Demon King, Noah explained the inside story to these people. Thus, disregarding the Alliance Army and the God Army, those who were closer to Noah were all people who knew the inside story. However, after Noah made this decision, although everyone was extremely shocked and had all sorts of reactions, some even voiced their objections, in the end they all agreed with Noah. Because of my own stubbornness, I caused everyone to pointlessly engage in a battle that required them to put their lives on the line. I am very sorry. Noah sighed. Although I have said the same words many times, I still feel that I have to say them. You are too serious, little brother Noah. Jiao Lu laughed in spite of himself. After I was enlightened by you, didn't I already tell you to leave your back to me? That promise was not only effective in the battle against Az Dakaha. Jiao Ling smiled sweetly. You are the person that big sister acknowledged. In the past month or so, we have fully witnessed the righteousness and ability in your heart. Following you to battle everywhere is something that we are willing to do. To be honest, at the beginning we were also shocked. Sarah recalled the matter at that time and couldn't help but sigh. He actually took the initiative to resurrect humans in the final trial. That is really unheard of. If I didn't believe that Mr. Noah is not the kind of person who would let innocent people fall into the abyss of suffering, I would have stood up to object no matter what, right? On the other hand, Mr. Noah is willing to bear the burden of resurrecting and killing humans in the final trial for a subordinate. Although it is very scary, it makes people feel that you are trustworthy, Shadora said in a childish voice. Lord White Yaksha must also trust Mr. Noah, which is why he agreed to resurrect Dystopia with you, right? That's it, little brother. 16th Night patted Noah's shoulder. Although it was your stubbornness, with your efforts, we did not suffer any casualties. That is enough. Okay. Noah raised his wine cup. I won't say any more. Let me offer you a toast. Everyone smiled and raised their wine cups, drinking it in one gulp. Chapter 16-18. Bang. Just as Noah, Jiao Lu, Jiao Ling, Sarah, Shadora, and 16th Night were happily drinking, a loud noise rang out, causing the entire ground to tremble. Following the loud noise, a huge water column shot up into the sky from the center of the banquet hall. It only fell after reaching hundreds of meters in the air. At the same time, screams rang out in the air. Those screams were coming from the mouths of the people around them. When the water column shot up into the sky, a group of people was also swept up into the air along with the water column. Then they fell to the ground with a series of screams. Looking at this scene, Noah was more or less in a daze. Soon after, he finally saw the situation in the direction of the rising water pillar. There was a lake there. In the center of the lake, a circular platform floated on the water surface. White Yaksha, who was wearing a kimono, stood on the platform and waved the fan in his hand with a joyful expression. Every time White Yaksha waved the fan, the entire lake would shake with a water column, sending the rest of the people on the platform into the air. They screamed as they fell to the ground. Regarding this, the surrounding crowd not only clapped and cheered, but they also eagerly rushed to the platform in the center of the lake. Then they were mercilessly sent flying by White Yaksha's water column. It was like a performance, causing Noah to be a little stunned. What's going on? Are you talking about that? 16th Night glanced at the platform in the center of the lake and said casually, That's the entertainment program hosted by White Yaksha. Entertainment program? Noah blinked and looked in Sarah's direction. Sensing Noah's gaze, Sarah explained. After arriving at the scene, Lord White Yaksha claimed that eating and drinking wasn't very satisfying, so he occupied the lake and hosted a bestowment game in the center of the lake. The general rule is that as long as you can push Lord White Yaksha out of the platform, the challenger will win. Even if they lose, they can continue to challenge until the banquet ends, Shadora continued. If you can win, then as the former ruler of the East District, Lord White Yaksha will reward the victor. It's a pity that although you only need to push him out of the platform to win, that kind of head-on confrontation is incomparable to the White Night King, who is the strongest among the star spirits, right? Jiao Lu shrugged. Even if all the capable people in the East, West, South and North regions are gathered here, without a 3-digit level, it would be difficult to even make the White Night King move, let alone push him out of the arena. Even so, there are still many people who wish to participate. Jiao Ling curled his lips. My opponent is a monster ranked in the top 10 of the boxers. In a situation where it's just a simple challenge, there are as many people who want to fight the White Night King as there are stars in the sky. If I can last for a while, not only will I be an individual, but even the community's reputation will increase greatly, right? It's because of this that White Yaksha organized that game, right? Noah was speechless. That fellow is already planning to leave, yet she still caused so much trouble. Well, no matter what, it's the last time. 16th Knight raised his wine cup and said very casually, after today, who knows when I can return to the lower realm. Let her cause trouble. Under the circumstances of returning the godhood, White Yaksha was an individual who did not belong to any sect in the heaven realm. As for people like White Yaksha and the great sage Heaven's Equal, who had great power but did not show any loyalty or affiliation to any sect, clan or group of gods, they were always the targets that the gods were wary of. Therefore, unless White Yaksha could convert to Buddhism and obtain the godhood, he could suppress his power and confirm his affiliation, allowing the gods to more or less be at ease. Otherwise, he would not be allowed to return to the lower realm as he pleased. By the time White Yaksha retrieved the godhood and returned to the lower realm, who knew how long he would have to wait? After all, if the godhood could be returned and retrieved as one wished, then the matters in the world would not be so troublesome. It was because of this that everyone allowed White Yaksha to cause trouble, right? However, in order to defeat the White Night King in a head-on confrontation, there is only one person in the entire Hakata's 4 regions who can do such a thing, 16th Knight said to Noah with an insufferably arrogant attitude. How about it? Aren't you going to give it a try? Meh. Noah swirled the wine in the wine cup in his hand, his dark and deep eyes reflecting some interest. To be able to exchange blows with someone who is ranked in the top 10 of the boxers, and only 17 of them in the double digits, it's not that I'm not interested. I think you should consider it carefully before taking action, Jiao Lu said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. If I let the two of you, who stand at the pinnacle of the boxers, fight, then not only that platform but the entire outer sect district will suffer, right? Second brother is right. Even Jia Ling showed a rare expression of bitterness. Little brother Noah, you've just become the ruler of the East District. Don't tell me you're thinking of completely destroying your own territory? Sarah and Shadora immediately nodded furiously, cold sweat dripping from their foreheads. Compared to the 2 rulers of the East District, these 2 rulers who were ranked in the top 5 were simply child's play. Noah naturally understood what everyone was worried about. However, Noah had to participate in White Yaksha's game. You all know that in a direct confrontation only I can defeat White Yaksha here. It's even more impossible for White Yaksha to not know. Noah scratched his cheek. So, that game of bestowment was obviously prepared for me to participate. Everyone was startled at first, but soon after, they nodded thoughtfully. Boom. At this moment, a water column shot up into the sky from the center of the lake, and a large group of people were sent flying. This time, among the people who fell from the sky, there were even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, and Pest. A few girls screamed as they fell from the sky. With a series of plop sounds, they fell into the lake. Noah covered his face and couldn't bear to look at it. Those girls actually went to challenge him too? The girls in our community are really competitive. 16th Knight was dumbfounded. Although they participated in 2 battles against the humans in the final trial and increased their strength a lot, they still can't challenge the strongest species of the Star Elves, right? It seems that I have to go. Noah sighed. After putting down the wine cup in his hand, he stood up. Then I'll go and meet White Yaksha. After speaking without giving everyone time to react, Noah directly dodged and jumped high. After drawing a perfect parabola in the air, he landed on the platform in the center of the lake. The expression on White Yaksha's face finally became serious, but his smile was getting wider. "You're finally willing to come up? You're indeed waiting for me?" Noah curled his lips and smiled. "You want to use this battle to tell the people in the East District that I, your successor, have the real ability to sit in your position? That's one of the reasons. Other than that, I personally hope to be able to fight with you." White Yaksha opened the fan in his hand and covered the lower half of his face, but his eyes were fixed on Noah. "To be able to defeat the hero of the final trial twice, how can I, the White Knight Monarch, not confirm his ability with my own hands?" Noah didn't expect White Yaksha to say such a thing. He was first surprised, then he revealed a smile. "If that's the case, then bring it on." "Of course." White Yaksha laughed loudly. "Accept the challenge of the White Knight Demon King, the hero of humanity." In the end, the battle lasted until the evening. In the end, when the entire lake evaporated completely, White Yaksha took the initiative to admit defeat, allowing Noah to win. After that, White Yaksha didn't say goodbye to anyone and left silently, returning to the Heaven Realm. Chapter 16-19. Outer Gate of Box 2105380, the base of the community, no name. Phew! In the hall's vast bathing area, Noah soaked his body in the warm water. As he let out a sigh of relief, he smiled bitterly. It's one thing for White Yaksha to leave without saying goodbye, but he actually left behind such a huge mess for me to clean up. After the farewell party ended, White Yaksha slipped away in an extremely carefree manner. However, as the organizer of the banquet and the leader of the East District, Noah had to clean up the mess. For example, he had to arrange for people to send back the people who had completely collapsed from drinking. For example, he had to clean up the mess left behind by the banquet. Another example was to restore the lake that had evaporated due to the intense battle to its original state. Arranging things one after another exhausted Noah. However, I never expected White Yaksha to be so strong. He's indeed worthy of being ranked in the top 10 strongest species in Box Court. In order to not cause too much of a disaster, Noah and White Yaksha subconsciously controlled their powers. This only resulted in the evaporation of the lake. Of course, although they controlled their powers in order to determine who was stronger, Noah and White Yaksha both used some of their true abilities. The degree of power they controlled also seemed to be blessed with good fortune, and they controlled it more or less. Even so, Noah was still forced into desperate straits by White Yaksha several times. If not for the various abilities of the 10 incarnations, which allowed him to constantly switch between incarnations, as well as the power of many treasures, which allowed him to avert all kinds of dangers, Noah would have been injured long ago. In return for politeness, Noah did not let White Yaksha off easily. He personally sent the strongest Sunstar spirit into danger several times. At Noah and White Yaksha's level, even if they showed mercy, the battle would definitely be dangerous if they really fought. Therefore, this was not strange at all. However, it was only natural that the onlookers would be frightened out of their wits when they saw this. Unfortunately, if I don't use another cosmology, I won't be able to win easily. In the battle with White Yaksha, Noah deliberately did not use the simulated star Atlas, another cosmology. Otherwise, Noah only needed to use one of Avesta and illusory star Taisway to defeat White Yaksha. However, Noah wanted to verify the difference between him and White Yaksha, who stood at the peak of Box Court, without using another cosmology. From the looks of it, if I use 4 incarnations at the same time, I can indeed match an existence like White Yaksha, who has a 2-digit number. During this period of time, Noah had sealed 1,000,000 deities, slaughtered thousands of deities, and killed 2 humans in the final trial. He had long since accumulated a lot of EXP and great achievements. Of course, the 2 young girls were completely naked. Their tender yet unique bodies were faintly discernible as they soaked in the hot water. They actually possessed a terrifying charm. Undoubtedly, the 2 young girls had the appearance of 11 or 12 years old girls. Yet they possessed such charm. Those who saw them, regardless of whether they were men or women, could imagine how beautiful they would be when they grew up to become mature women. Even Noah couldn't help but be startled. He asked almost subconsciously, "When did you 2 come in?" "We've been here for a while." Letitia's deep red eyes looked straight at Noah. "It would appear that Master is truly thinking about something very complicated. You don't even know when we came in." "I was only dragged in by Letitia," Pest resisted from the bottom of her heart. "Really, I wouldn't want to come in a bathhouse. I know that bathhouses were not popularized in the era when you were still alive. It is only natural that you are not used to it. However, you should be used to it by now, right?" Letitia glanced at Pest and smiled. Besides, even though you said you were resisting, didn't you still obediently come in the moment I told you that Master was here and needed us to serve him? So annoying. Pest said impatiently. There's no need to mention that sort of thing. Seeing the two young maids quarreling before him, Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This sort of scene was actually very common in the month he spent fighting against the Demon King of Dystopia. At an unknown point in time, Letitia and Pest's relationship had undergone some subtle changes. In the past, Letitia had been firmly suppressing Pest. Pest was suppressed to the point that she did not even dare to show her temper. Now, for some unknown reason, Letitia no longer paid attention to Pest's occasional rude behavior. At the same time that Pest felt fear toward Letitia, she would occasionally summon up her courage to resist. It was as if she planned to fight for something with Letitia. Yet Letitia was enjoying it. Thus, the relationship between the two of them became as subtle as it was now. After quarreling for a while, Letitia stopped speaking. She turned around and looked at Noah. Master, are you really planning to leave? Chapter 16:20. Master, are you really planning to leave? Letitia's question caused the atmosphere in the vast bathing area to become somewhat heavy. At this moment, regardless of whether it was Letitia or Pest, both of them revealed expressions of reluctance. One must know that even though Letitia and Pest both appeared to be 11 or 12 years old girls, one of them had actually lived for at least 1,000 years. As for the other, even if she hadn't lived for 1,000 years, she'd still lived for several hundred years. Furthermore, Letitia was the type of person who would not reveal a weak appearance. Pest was also the type of person who would not please others in all aspects. The two of them were not the type to easily reveal their true emotions. Under such circumstances, the two girls still could not help but reveal expressions of reluctance. From this, one could imagine that Letitia and Pest truly did not wish to see Noah leave from the bottom of their hearts. The two girls were saved by Noah. Noah had pulled Letitia and Pest out of the abyss of vengeance. He had also helped the two girls accomplish their wishes. In the hearts of the two girls, he had long since become the closest person to them. There was no other. Because of this, Noah's departure would inevitably cause Letitia and Pest to feel some reluctance. However, Noah's departure was something that could not be changed. I also have my own matters that I need to attend to, Noah sighed. He raised his head and looked at the ceiling. Although I act like a great person in front of you, I'm actually someone who hasn't even solved my own problems. If I can't even solve my own problems, then there's no need to talk about continuing to stay by your side. That's right. Even though Noah had managed to resolve Letitia and Pest's matters, all this time, Noah had yet to even resolve his own matters. When he was born, he possessed the appearance, intelligence and age of 10 years old. He possessed the three great constitutions that others did not possess. Only he alone was able to transcend the boundaries of the world and enter the space between worlds. Additionally, he also possessed the mission of restoring the destroyed worlds and receiving the care of the worlds. All of these proved Noah's uniqueness. In the eyes of others, Noah was someone who even the gods of the heavenly realm feared. He was someone who could single-handedly suppress humans in the final trial. He stood at the peak of humanity as a human. All of his deeds could only be described as legendary. But in fact, just like what Noah said, even though he achieved achievements that others couldn't achieve in one world after another, he was still a person who didn't even know his own origin. It wasn't that Noah hadn't thought about unraveling the mystery surrounding him. However, Gaia and Aleia had never revealed anything to Noah, which proved that the time was not yet right. In the end, Noah could only suppress the thoughts in his heart and travel from one world to another while thinking of ways to increase his strength. To put it nicely, this kind of life was one of being positive and striving to find the opportunity to solve the puzzle in one's body as soon as possible. To put it bluntly, it was just going with the flow. Now, Noah felt that he shouldn't continue like this. Both Gaia and Aleia had told Noah that Noah would understand everything one day if he wholeheartedly increased his strength. And now, Noah had already increased his strength to the point where he could be considered a peak existence even in this world where gods and Buddhas were everywhere and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs. Noah didn't know if this level of strength could reach Gaia and Aleia's standards. However, Noah didn't want to wait any longer. After seeing that terrifying eye in his dream, Noah felt that it was time for him to move forward. Even an evil god like Azdakaha had his own path and resolutely walked to the end without the slightest regret. As the person who defeated him, if I don't even know my own path, how can I have the face to claim that I defeated him? Noah said from the bottom of his heart as he extended his hand and unconsciously rubbed Letitia and Pest's little heads. So, no matter what, I have to take a step forward. Even if it's just a small step, it'll be fine. Noah's words allowed Letitia and Pest to clearly sense their master's determination. Although I don't know what Master is concerned about, I believe that Master's decision is correct, Letitia said sincerely. Since that's the case, we won't say anything else. Just because you don't have anything to say doesn't mean that I don't have anything to say, Pest retorted. She looked at Noah with a somewhat unreconciled gaze. I only want to ask, is there nothing I can help you with? No matter how small the matter is? Even if you ask, I don't know, Noah said with a wry smile. There are still many things that I don't understand. I'm also confused about what I should do. I don't even know what I should do. How am I supposed to ask you for help? At this moment, even Pest was at a loss for words. Her eyes were filled with unwillingness. For the sake of helping Pest fulfill her wish, Noah did not hesitate to revive the humans in the final trial. Furthermore, for the sake of not letting this decision lead to the sacrifice of a single person, he worked hard for an entire month. Pest had witnessed the entire process. Although she did not say anything, Pest's gratitude toward Noah had accumulated to a point where it could explode at any moment. If possible, Pest only hoped that she would be able to help Noah. Now, it would appear that this wish of hers was nothing more than an extravagant hope. Seeing the extremely strong unwillingness in Pest's eyes, the bitter smile on Noah's face grew even stronger. He began to rub Pest's head with even more strength. He continued to rub Pest's head. What are you doing? Pest began to struggle in a flurry. Don't mess with my hair like that. Noah ignored Pest's protest and continued to rub Pest's hair. He even poured water on it and began to wash Pest's hair. Without giving Pest another chance to protest, Noah directly said, if you really want to help me, then help me. If you really want to help me, then work with Letitia and help me deal with the work of the Stratum Dominator. The work of the Stratum Ruler? Pest was startled. That's right, Noah nodded his head. His tone was somewhat gentle. I've said it before. I also have my own matters that I need to take care of. However, that does not mean that I can ignore the matters of the people around me for the sake of my own matters. My companions and friends are also in this box. I do not wish to see any accidents happen to them, Noah said with a smile as he washed Pest's hair. Thus, during this period of time that I am not around, I hope that the two of you can help me protect everything that I cherish. Hearing those words, Pest struggling slowly stopped. She glared at Noah as if she was throwing a tantrum. Truly cunning. What? Noah chuckled. What? Is that not the case? Pest muttered. Now that you've said it like that, I am unable to refuse. Who said that? Noah rolled his eyes. Am I the type of person who would force others to do something they are unwilling to do? That is why I said that you are very cunning. Pest said loudly. Since this is something that you want to do, how could I not be willing to do it? Noah was stunned for a moment, and then he couldn't help but laugh. In that case, are you willing to help me? My adorable little maid? I am not your maid. I am only your subordinate. Pest turned her head away. However, since this is Master's order, I can only obey. Truly not, Frank, Letitia smiled sweetly. However, I feel the same way as Pest. Since this is something that Master treasures, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will help you protect it. Then it's settled. Noah immediately said. Letitia, Pest, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, the two of you must protect the things that I cherish. Letitia and Pest both had serious expressions on their faces as they nodded their heads heavily. In the next moment, Noah suddenly extended his hands and embraced Letitia and Pest. Also, don't forget that the two of you are also things that I cherish. The two of you must sacrifice your lives to properly protect yourselves. Those words caused Letitia and Pest's hearts to warm up. Lying in Noah's embrace, they nodded their heads heavily again. Noah easily recognized it. It was the map of No Name's base. At the corner of the map there was an arrow. That was the place the kidnapper wanted to go to, right? Holding the letter, Noah stared blankly for a long time. After a long time he squeezed out a sentence. What the hell? Don't blame Noah for not feeling nervous. It was just that this letter was a little strange. If he thought about it carefully he would understand. First of all, why would the other party know the detailed terrain of No Name's base and draw it out? Secondly, why would the kidnapper want to negotiate in No Name's territory? Lastly, if this letter was real, Why did Noah not feel anything out of the ordinary? The no-name of today was no longer the no-name of the past. Any random 7-digit tiger man could kidnap a bunch of people. Putting aside the fact that Letitia and Pest were both 4-digit existences, 16 Nights, Flying Bird, Radiance, and Black Rabbit were also not easy to deal with. Who would have the ability to kidnap these people without causing any commotion? At least, from Noah's point of view, unless it was someone like the Queen of All Saints who could control realms, and someone with at least a 3-digit number, only then would they have the ability to do this. Otherwise, even if it was an extremely secretive gift or the organizer's authority, it would still be impossible to do this without Noah noticing. Thinking about it this way, Noah could roughly guess who the kidnapper was. Those problematic children. Noah had a headache as he crushed the letter in his hand. Then, with a bitter expression, he turned around and walked out of the meeting room. Whoosh! A light breeze blew through the entire no-name's base, causing the rice in the farmland to sway like a young girl with her hair. At a glance, the entire vast land was evenly divided into pieces and crops were planted there. The scene that entered one's eyes were fields full of vitality. No one would be willing to believe it, right? Just 2 months ago, the land here was a lifeless wilderness. It was simply like a ruin, unbearable to look at. After a period of reclamation and development, the land belonging to No Name had recovered its vitality. Although it would still take some time to recover to the same level of prosperity as 3 years ago, looking at the fields full of vitality, no one would think that it was impossible. Noah walked among the fields, following the map drawn on the letter, and walked forward. Not long after, Noah arrived at the edge of No Name's base. There was still no time to develop this place. Therefore, unlike the fields that were full of vitality, the nearby land was still as deserted as before. Noah walked into this deserted area and immediately saw it. In front of him, 3 young boys and girls were standing side by side in a row. They put on an impressive posture and looked in the direction of Noah. Yo! 16th Night revealed an insufferably arrogant smile. You're finally here? Although there's no time attached, it's not a good habit to make a virtuous girl wait. Flying Bird stretched out her hand and brushed her long hair. If you still didn't come, we were going to kill the hostages. Kill the hostages. Yao blinked his eyes as if he didn't know there was such a setting. Soon after, he reacted and nodded with a solemn expression. That's right, we're going to kill the hostages. Seeing the 3 problematic children speaking with an evil tone, as if they had discussed this from the very beginning, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched. Especially when he saw the 3 problematic children, Noah became even more speechless. Beside the 3 problem children were Letitia, Pest and Wren. The 3 of them had their backs against each other. They were tied together by a rope. I'm sorry, Master. Letitia lowered her head as if she was too ashamed to see anyone. I never thought that these problematic children would actually do such a thing. Who would have thought that our companions in the community would suddenly launch a sneak attack and knock us unconscious? Pest was furious. Furthermore, exactly what is going on with this rope? Why are we unable to break free from it? That's a tool capable of nullifying a bestowment, Wren explained helplessly. Furthermore, it's a reward given to me by Lord White Yaksha after Mr. Noah won against him yesterday. In other words, the 3 problematic children had used the spoils of war that Noah had won to carry out this kidnapping plan. Of course, Letitia, Pest and Wren's condition could still be considered good. What truly caused Noah to ridicule them was the fact that there was another person tied up before the 3 of them. Whoa! Black Rabbit was sobbing as tears flowed down from his eyes. It wasn't that Black Rabbit didn't want to speak. Rather, there was a piece of rag stuffed into his mouth. His entire body was tied up like a rice dumpling. Like a caterpillar, he was struggling non-stop on the ground. Seeing this scene, Noah covered his face. At this moment, Noah was even able to understand the sorrowful cries in Black Rabbit's heart. Why must you treat me like this? Black Rabbit's tear-streaked face was all telling this sentence. Chapter 16:22. In the air, an indescribable atmosphere was spreading. That atmosphere, if one were to say it was heavy, then it was somewhat comical. If one were to say it was comical, then there were some parts that were hard to agree with. It could only be said that it was very subtle. Noah could only look at the 3 problem children, 16 Nights, Flying Bird, and Yao, who were acting like villains. After holding back for a long time, he pointed at Black Rabbit, who was tied up like a big dumpling, and squeezed out such a sentence. Speaking of which, why do you treat Black Rabbit differently? As if the words in her heart were spoken, Black Rabbit with tears in her eyes kept nodding her head. However, 16th Night, Fei Yao and Yao seemed to be surprised. They first glanced at the black rabbit that was rolling on the ground like a caterpillar before exchanging glances with each other. In the end, they looked at Noah in unison. Because it's fun? Because it's easy to use? Because it's easy to bully? The three uncertain answers made the corner of Noah's mouth twitch fiercely. Black Rabbit was stunned as if it had been hit by a stick. After a while, tears flowed down its face with a crashing sound. Obviously, 16 Nights, Flying Bird, and Yao only subconsciously bullied Black Rabbit and didn't think that they had done something that treated her differently. Poor Black Rabbit. Undoubtedly, as a young girl, she was very charming in all aspects, but she became the pastime of these three problem children. No wonder even Jialing, who met Black Rabbit for the first time, said that she was a toy of Buddhism and Sakura. The atmosphere of remnant thoughts was probably like a curse that surrounded Black Rabbit's body. Forget it, if I care about the details I feel like I've lost. Noah forced himself to accept the situation and question the three problem children. Then please tell me what is the purpose of doing this? Noah's words made the three problem children raise their eyebrows. I say, little brother, do you really not understand or are you pretending not to understand? A frivolous smile appeared on 16 Nights' face. Like a delinquent, he raised his fingers. We are doing this, of course, to repay our previous debt. Previous debt. Noah's face was full of innocence. What debt do I owe you? Don't tell me you forgot, Noah. Fei Niao pointed at Noah and shouted loudly. No matter if it's me, Sagakuki-san or Sagakuki-san, we've all been taught a lesson by you. Noah was really confused. 16 Nights could still be counted as fixing, but since when did Noah fix Flying Bird and Yao? Wasn't this framing him? As a result, Yao seemed to have seen through Noah's doubts and puffed up his cheeks. Have you forgotten? How did you treat me and Fei Niao during the fire dragon's birth ceremony? After being reminded by Yao, Noah finally remembered. Back then, during the fire dragon's birth ceremony, Noah had indeed briefly fought with Fei Niao and Yao. Have you finally remembered? Fei Niao teased. At that time, you even spanked Haruai classmates' butt. With one sentence, the already subtle atmosphere in the air directly became awkward. Fei Niao. Yao's face was slightly red as he puffed up his cheeks and kept hitting Fei Niao's back with his small fists. So painful. Okay. I won't say any more. Stop hitting me. Fei Niao quickly dodged Yao's small fists as if she really felt the pain. After all, Fei Niao's body was just an ordinary girl. Even if it was just a light hit, it would still hurt. Now, do you know what's going on? 16 Nights ignored Fei Niao and Yao's quarrel and grinned at Noah. We're here to repay the debt you owe us. So you're saying that you kidnapped me just to challenge me? Noah was really puzzled. If that's the case, can't you just tell me directly? After hearing Noah's words, 16 Nights, Fei Niao, and Yao said in unison. No, that's not interesting at all. Noah almost couldn't catch his breath in time. At this moment, Noah felt incomparably stifled. Even Noah was in such a state. He was reduced to three problematic children who had only been attacked because of the interesting angle. Letitia, Pest, Ren and Black Rabbit were all tied up and had their hands tied behind their backs. Needless to say, Letitia, Pest, Ren and Black Rabbit were all extremely sullen. All in all, that's it, Fei Niao coughed and pretended to say. Noah, if you want to save your people, then you have to accept our challenge. Then let me ask first. Noah let out a big sigh and said bluntly. You can't be thinking that the three of you can win against me just by joining hands, right? Look. Yao immediately muttered. How arrogant. It wasn't just Yao. Even 16 Nights and Fei Niao also wanted to vent their anger but couldn't refute. That was only natural. In terms of combat strength, even if the three problem children were all tied up together, they still wouldn't be able to win against Noah. It wasn't that 16 Nights, Fei Niao and Yao were too weak. It was just that Noah broke the rules too much. 16 Nights, the truth is unknown, possessed two abilities that were outside of the norm, the gift of shattering heaven and earth, and the power of shattering gift. Her combat power was ranked in the 4 digits. Even though she was not as strong as Letitia, she was on par with Pest. Fei Niao's, Light of Might, could bestow a simulated godhead to the target, raising the target's spirit lattice to the maximum. As long as he had enough blessings, the combat strength he could unleash would not be below 16 Nights. Yao's, Life Catalog, could even obtain the spirit lattice of all beasts. He could obtain the blessings of wild beasts, illusion beasts and even divine beasts. If he used it well, he could practically possess the abilities of all beasts. These 3 blessings were all considered by Black Rabbit to be the highest level of human existence. One could imagine how high the potential of these three blessings were. And in the successive battles against absolute evil and closed world, the potential of Fei Niao and Yao had already begun to sprout. In order to ensure that Fei Niao's blessings could fully unleash its potential, during the expedition against closed world, as an ally, Will-O-Wisp helped Fei Niao create several high-level blessings, raising Fei Niao's combat strength by several levels in one go. The true value of Yao's life catalog was also unearthed. Noah also only found out about it not long ago. In fact, the true effect of Yao's life catalog was that he could collect information from all life forms. He could take samples from the system tree's catalog, and then proceed with evolution and synthesis, imitating the power of all life forms. This blessings could even imitate the power of the strongest species, and turn the imitated power into a weapon to carry out a higher level of application. As long as he had this blessings, no matter how unreasonable the game was, the user would be able to respond to all situations and obtain the corresponding blessings. After knowing the true ability of the life catalog, Noah immediately thought of something. Gate of Babylon. Yao's life catalog was simply another type of Gate of Babylon. However, when Yao used more blessings than the total amount of spirits stored in the life catalog, in order to protect the user, the blessings would temporarily stop functioning. And if he imitated the power of the strongest species, not only could he only use it for a short period of time, in the following period of time, Yao's life catalog would also lose its effect. It would not be until a month later that the spirit would be completely restored. To put it bluntly, today the three problem children all had 4-digit levels of power. But even so, it was still impossible to beat Noah. The three problem children naturally felt unreconciled, but it was not to the point of not admitting it. So, in order to make our revenge meaningful, you should accept our game. Accompanied by the declaration of the three problem children, a contract flashed in the air and floated down, falling into Noah's hands. Gift game name, alternating attack and defense revenge match, only victory condition, hit the opponent's body, only defeat condition. When the contestant is unable to achieve the above victory conditions, first game rule, alternating attack and defense, the opponent reduced to the defensive side can only dodge and cannot attack. Second game rule, every 3 minutes, alternating attack and defense will take place. After 3 minutes, the attacking side and the defending side will exchange. Third game rule, all contestants will be divided into 2 camps, black and white. Alternating attack and defense will take place between the 2 camps. Contestants of the same camp will share victory and defeat conditions. If one person wins or loses, the group wins or loses. Fourth game rule, in the first 3 minutes the attacking side must be the side with more people. Black camp contestant, Noah Doria. White camp contestant, 16 Knights Reversal, Juyuan Fei Niao, Kasuga Hikari. Oath. Respect the above content, based on glory and flag and the name of the organizer. Host the gift game. No name, seal. W. What? Looking at the contract in his hand, Noah could not help but let out a shocked voice. Bang. At this moment, along with the sound of an explosion, a figure shot toward Noah's direction. Chapter 1623. Bang. 16 Knights figure turned into a rocket accompanied by the sound of the ground exploding. With the terrifying speed known as the Third Universe's speed, he instantly shot towards Noah and flashed in front of Noah. The game has begun. Bro. Stop daydreaming. With an arrogant laugh, 16th Knight raised a fist, and with a sonic boom in the air, he threw a punch at Noah's chest. 16 Knights didn't hold back at all in this punch. His fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers, was blasted towards Noah's chest with a shocking explosion. Undoubtedly, the winning condition was to hit the opponent's body, but 16 Knights used all of his strength in this fight. Obviously, 16 Knights clearly knew that if he held back, he wouldn't be able to win in this game where he had the advantage. It was this awareness that made Noah subconsciously enter battle mode. However, at that moment, Noah, who was on the defensive, was simply unable to attack at all. He could only dodge. Facing 16 Knights' earth-shattering punch, Noah's methods were already on the verge of being revealed. Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse. The evil cannot hit me. In the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with 10 patterns on its outline suddenly turned and pointed to the phoenix. In the next instant, Noah's entire body transformed into a mirage-like phantom. Along with a string of light and shadow, he disappeared on the spot. Bang. The fist, which was strong enough to shatter mountains and rivers and split the sea, exploded the afterimage Noah had left behind. The afterimage was like a piece of glass and it burst apart. This scene didn't surprise 16 Knights. Instead, it made 16 Knights reveal an expression of as expected, and he shouted, "Kasuga tribe." Yao, who was waiting in place, immediately reached out his hand and tightly grasped the pendant hanging in front of him. Vital Catalog. Shape Makisius. The life catalog on Yao's neck suddenly blossomed with a bright light. Under the light, the round wooden sculpture slowly twisted and turned into a dazzling radiance, covering Yao's feet. When the light faded away, a pair of steel boots appeared on Yao's feet. It was a pair of combat boots with tips as sharp as the claws of ferocious beasts and decorations that resembled the feathers of griffins. Clang! The boots landed on the ground, producing a powerful sound of metal clashing. Yao, who was wearing a pair of ferocious war boots, slowly closed his eyes. After a while, Yao suddenly opened his eyes, turned his head and looked in a certain direction. Over there. As soon as he finished speaking, Yao spun around and launched a roundhouse kick in the air. As Yao spun around, a black flame burst out from the pair of terrifying boots under his feet. Under Yao's roundhouse kick, it turned into a fire wheel whistling through the space. With a cheese sound, it shot forward while spinning. Almost at the same time, Noah's figure appeared out of thin air. The place where he appeared was the direction where the black fire wheel came from. The terrible heat rushed towards Noah's body. Noah hurriedly stomped on the ground, shattering it. At the same time, he retreated like a bullet fired from a gun. Bang! The black fire wheel suddenly fell on Noah's previous position, and the ground that was crushed by Noah exploded, setting off a scorching fire, and a strong shock wave, blowing in all directions. In the storm, Noah's figure rushed out, and even a wisp of smoke came out from his body. He landed on the edge of the fire and was speechless. So that's how it is, did you predict my position? Makisius. He was the 35th demon god of Solomon's 72 demon god pillars, a marquis who commanded 30 legions and a powerful warrior. However, Makisius was not a demon but a phantasmal beast. Moreover, he was known as the third fantasy breed. He looked like a wolf, but at the same time he had the wings of a griffin and the tail of a snake. By changing the shape of the life catalog, and turning it into a weapon, Yao obtained the gift of the third fantasy breed named Makisius. There were two kinds of gifts from Makisius. One was a demonic flame comparable to the flames of hell. The other was the ability to foresee the future a few seconds later. Wearing the pair of boots, Yao predicted Noah's position a few seconds later and released an attack there. Therefore, Noah, who entered the world of Godspeed, was directly forced to exit the Godspeed state, which allowed him to narrowly avoid Yao's attack. Just like how you know about our grace ability, we also know about your authority ability. Looking at Noah's speechless expression, Yao proudly puffed out his chest. Your seraphic speed authority doesn't increase speed, nor does it shorten distance. Instead, it shortens the time needed to move by manipulating time. It's like a space jump. It's a very high-level ability. However, if I can predict your position, then it won't be a problem. If Noah could attack, relying on the ability of the Phoenix to shorten the time needed to move, Noah could win with a terrifying speed that no one could react to. Unfortunately, Noah was now on the defensive side and could not attack at all. He could only rely on his god speed to move. In that case, Dazzling Maxias would be able to predict Noah's location and calmly launch an attack. If Noah could attack, we might have lost immediately. However, Noah is now on the defensive side. For the next 3 minutes, it's completely our home ground. Yao made a declaration in high spirits, which was rare for him to do. Within 3 minutes, we will hit you and win. In other words, if the 3 problem children could not win in 3 minutes, then when Noah switched to the offensive side, it would be their defeat. Whoosh. While he spoke, a figure shot over like a rocket, accompanied by a low and deep air explosion sound. In an instant he appeared in front of Noah. The person who could have such speed was naturally 16 Knights. Without much time to think, Noah's eyes flashed with a fierce light. He suddenly lifted his foot and stomped heavily on the ground. The powerful force directly shook the hard ground into powder, setting off a burst of wind and sand, which covered Noah's body. Diske, you still have this move. 16 Knights, who was preparing to throw a punch, was hit by the sudden burst of wind and sand, but his body did not stop at all. He directly rushed into the wind and sand, and his figure also disappeared inside. However, just as 16 Knights' figure rushed into the wind and sand, a figure rushed out from another direction like lightning. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and he quickly retreated like a rabbit. However, in the next second, Noah, who was rushing over, raised his head and looked at the sky. There, a figure was suspended there. Impressively, it was Yao who used the griffin's whirlwind favor. Yao let out an extremely imposing shout, and with a spin of her body she suddenly rolled up a whirlwind mixed with pitch-black devil flames. It shook the atmosphere, and the pitch-black flame whirlwind was like a drill that broke through the sky, sweeping towards Noah's direction. Looking at the pitch-black flaming whirlwind descending from the sky, Noah stopped in his tracks and dodged, hiding behind a huge rock at the side. The pitch-black flame whirlwind fell from the sky heavily on the huge rock, and the huge rock suddenly exploding into thick dust that spread on the ground. Like a fog, it shrouded the space with a diameter of a few hundred meters. Cough, cough, cough. In the thick dust, Noah rushed out with a dusty face. He coughed and smiled bitterly. That group of problem children, they actually made me so embarrassed. As soon as this sentence fell, an unruly laughter rang out. Unfortunately, little brother, we planned for so long not just to make you embarrassed, but to defeat you. As soon as the voice fell, clang! A burst of extremely dazzling starlight bloomed. Chapter 16:24. Clang! An extremely dazzling light shone from No Name's base, illuminating the entire space. Under the shroud of the dazzling light, everything was dyed a gorgeous white, so dazzling that it was difficult to describe. And in the center of the dazzling light, 16 Knights smiled, his eyes flashing with a dazzling light, and raised his right arm in the direction of Noah. On his right hand an aurora shone like a star map, and the dazzling light poured out in all directions like a tide. Seeing this scene happen with his own eyes, Noah's heart shook, and a surprised expression finally appeared on his face. Because at this moment in Noah's heart, there was an extremely strong sense of crisis. So Noah understood. That light, that gift, it can't be? You finally found it? The corners of 16th Knight's mouth curled up slightly as the dazzling light in his eyes became even more intense. I only found out what the true form of this power was after I came to this box. Moreover, I was inspired by you, little brother. So, little brother, if you don't take this seriously, don't blame me when you die. Die. That was not an exaggeration. At least Noah knew. If he couldn't take the light from 16 Knight's hand, then he might really die. Even if the many gods in the heaven realm were here, perhaps, they would believe it without a doubt and would feel shocked. Because no one would think that the power that could only be used by a person who had the ability to become the center of a group of gods would actually appear in the body of a second human. Yes, this is my biggest trump card. 16 Knights declared loudly. The hero of the final trial who crusaded against absolute evil and closed world. Take my another cosmology and try it out. The aurora shining in 16 Knights' hand suddenly converged into a beam. Accompanied by the sound of space trembling, the divine aurora that covered the entire space like a tidal wave suddenly turned into an aurora pillar that pierced through the heavens and the earth. It rubbed against the air and cut across the sky, shooting toward Noah's direction. Wherever the aurora pillar passed, the ground was dug up without any suspense. The soil and rocks did not even have a chance to come into contact with the atmosphere, and directly evaporated without leaving a trace. At this moment, space was distorted, the atmosphere was twisted, and even the light of the stars was ruthlessly overtaken, annihilated in the holy aurora, disappearing without a trace. Therefore, in this world there was nothing more dazzling than the holy aurora. Noah's vision had long been filled with the dazzling aurora. In such a situation, Noah, on the contrary, calmed down. And this was the evidence that Noah was serious. With intuition, Noah knew. At this time, the aurora that 16 Knights wielded was the strongest attack that could even penetrate the sky and shatter the stars. In the face of that strongest attack, even Noah only had two ways to deal with it. 1. Using more than 4 avatars at the same time with the same power that was more than 3 digits above the box. Only then could it be possible to block it. 2. Using the same trump card to counterattack. However, 3 minutes had not passed and Noah could not attack. Then I can only offset it. The another cosmology, named Avesta, had no way to imitate the human's cosmology. However, if it was also another cosmology, then there was no problem at all. This was because another cosmology was an independent cosmology to begin with. Even if the user was a human, it could still be imitated. Clang. Noah's whole body suddenly bloomed with the same dazzling starlight, illuminating the entire sky. Activate Avesta. Counteracted in turn. Simulating another cosmology. At this moment, the starlight that bloomed from Noah's body directly suppressed the surrounding aurora, becoming the second color between heaven and earth. Just like that, the starlight skyrocketed and rushed straight to the sky, instantly enveloping the entire space. Like a vortex of light, it suddenly appeared in a corner of No Name's base. Then, the towering aurora pillar carried a terrifying power that even shook the space, violently swept over like lightning, colliding with the dazzling vortex of light with a loud bang. Rumble. Amidst the earth-shattering noise, the aurora pillar and the vortex of light collided with a loud bang, stirring up a terrifying energy storm. From the point of collision, the shockwave spread out like lightning. The scene that resembled the explosion of a star caused the surrounding ground to crack inch by inch and collapse one after another. It was like a hurricane that spanned across the heavens and the earth. Everywhere it passed, the temperature between the heavens and the earth would suddenly rise, causing the entire atmosphere to become violent. It shook the space and set off waves of ripples. This was just the aftermath. Just the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, another cosmology, turned the surrounding area into hell. Everything was annihilated into powder and completely disappeared. If 16th Nights, another cosmology, was allowed to land on the land of No Name, then not to mention the surrounding area, perhaps the entire outer gate of 2105380 would completely disappear, right? Such a terrifying power caused the terrifying energy storm's aftermath to fiercely shake Noah's body. Boom. There was a muffled sound that caused one's heart to shrink. Noah's body was like a kite with a broken string. He flew backwards and smashed violently onto the ground. After rubbing against the ground for a distance of several hundred meters, he slowly came to a stop. However, upon closer inspection, Noah did not land on his back, but his feet rubbed against the ground and he was fiercely sent flying. As for his body, he did not suffer any injuries. After all, with the power of Avesta, the power of the pillar of light that penetrated the heavens and the earth would be offset. Even if such a terrifying aftermath was produced, just the aftermath alone would not be able to injure the current Noah. Of course, Noah still felt a tightness in his chest, and his body stiffened for an extremely short period of time. This momentary stiffening caused the scales of victory to tip. Boom. Without any warning, the ground behind Noah suddenly exploded, filling the sky with dirt and gravel. Immediately, a steel sphere rushed out from the ground. From the steel sphere that suddenly broke out of the ground, a delicate shout sounded. Alma. Remove the defense. As soon as the delicate shout sounded, another voice suddenly sounded. Understood. The ice-cold steel sphere suddenly wriggled like a wave, and flashed with electricity, suddenly changing its form. Not long after, a mountain goat with majestic horns, strong and powerful limbs, and silver fur appeared in the air. Its entire body was bursting with electricity. And on the back of the mountain goat that was bursting with electricity, a young girl was riding on it. It was Flying Bird. With his superb sensing ability, Noah was clearly aware of the movement behind him. He forcefully whipped his body and suddenly turned around. Ha! Just as Noah was about to dodge, Fei Miao, who was riding on the goat's back, let out a delicate cry. Without any hesitation, she leaped down towards Noah, who was below. That scene was simply like a young girl who was about to commit suicide by jumping off a cliff, without any protection at all. If Flying Bird was allowed to fall like this young girl, who was no different from an ordinary person in terms of physical ability, would definitely end up with injuries all over her body. At this moment, Noah's face could not help but show a sluggish expression, and hurriedly reached out his hand, subconsciously catching the falling Flying Bird. Thus the outcome was revealed. Paw. Flying Bird reached out a hand and patted Noah's shoulder. A contract flashed and floated down from the air. Chapter 1625. Silence. There was a deathly silence. Noah looked at the contract document that floated down from mid-air, and his face was full of shock. Because, on the contract document, it was marked with such content. The contestant from the white camp has reached the winning condition. The game is over. In other words, Noah lost. Even Flying Bird seemed to not believe this result. Ignoring the fact that Noah was carrying her in his arms, she turned her head and asked the goat with uncertainty. Did we succeed, Alma? The goat that Flying Bird called Alma nodded and spoke in human language. Yes, you succeeded, my master. Congratulations on winning against the hero who could single-handedly defeat absolute evil and closed world in the final trial. Really succeeded? Flying Bird was overjoyed and cheered. That's great. Looking at Flying Bird who was cheering in his arms, Noah opened and closed his mouth several times, but he couldn't say a word. In the end, Noah could only say this. Aren't you guys too despicable? Despicable? Flying Bird stopped cheering and stared at Noah. I can't pretend that I didn't hear that. How are we despicable? Noah couldn't say anything for a while. After all, in the game of gifts, using wisdom is a very important part. The three problem children first launched a surprise attack on Noah, letting Noah, who was on the defense, use the Phoenix incarnation to dodge. Then they let Yao use the gift of Maximus to seal Noah's speed. Then they let 16 Knights use the Another Cosmology to force out Noah's trump card, forcing Noah to be on the defense. Then Flying Bird relied on its new gift to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, Another Cosmology. It then hid underground and waited for Noah to reveal a flaw before launching a surprise attack. If at that time Flying Bird launched an attack on Noah, then Noah, with his superb sensing ability, would definitely react in time and dodge. However, Flying Bird didn't launch an attack. Instead, she risked her own injury and took a gamble. She gambled on whether Noah would choose to catch Flying Bird knowing that she would be injured. In the end, using Noah's gentleness, Flying Bird won. It sounded despicable, but skillfully using the opponent's weakness was also a very important method in the game of gifts. In this game, Noah's weakness was that he was too gentle. He couldn't sit and watch Flying Bird get injured, which was why he was checkmated. Therefore, from the perspective of the game, no one would see this method as despicable. Otherwise, Flying Bird, with her extremely high self-esteem, would definitely not use this method. Could it be that the famous human hero thinks that the three of us working together is despicable? Flying Bird said provocatively. But before the battle began, undoubtedly, a certain person swore that even if the three of us worked together, we still wouldn't be able to beat you, right? Your Excellency Noah, this time, it is indeed your loss. Alma also said the same thing. Here it's better to admit it honestly. Noah was speechless and could only look at the goat-like divine beast in front of him. Almaty. That was the name of this goat-like divine beast. Almatia was once the goddess of fertility who nurtured the young Greek god Zeus. The god of forging, Hephaestus, once used the fur of this goat-like goddess of fertility to create a divine shield for Zeus and Athena. Those two divine shields were both named Aegis. Yes. The famous Aegis shield was made from the fur of this goddess of fertility. However, this goddess had already fallen once. Her fur, after a few twists and turns, fell into the hands of No Name, who was still at his peak 3 years ago, and had been preserved until now. Because they considered that even though Flying Bird had a powerful gift, she didn't have a way to protect herself. Therefore, after some discussion, the people of No Name found Almadia's fur and asked Willow's Wisp to create a new gift. With the assistance of Vera, who could control the realm of life and death, and with the addition of a precious mineral called adamantine, the former goddess of fertility was reincarnated into a divine beast and made a contract with Flying Bird. It must be known that adamantine was comparable to divine precious iron, and it was a mineral with a high tolerance for gifts. Many of the bestowment weapons that were made to imitate godhead weapons were made from such precious minerals. Therefore, after the fur was covered with adamantine, Almaty could transform into the strongest shield of the Greek gods, Aegis, which could block all attacks at any time. However, if Almaty wanted to transform into the divine shield Aegis, she must have the divine artifact of the sky. However, because of Almadia's reincarnation, she had already lost her divine artifact and divinity. For that reason, if Flying Bird wished to use the defensive ability of the Aegis divine shield, she would have to feed Almatia 4 orbs that were imbued with a simulated divine spark. Only then would Almatia be able to temporarily retrieve her original divine spark. Although there were restrictions with this divine shield, Flying Bird had the defensive ability of a battle fortress, and she didn't have to worry about her own safety. It was because of this gift that Flying Bird was able to survive the aftermath of the collision between the two simulated star Atlas, Another Cosmology, and hide underground, right? All right. Noah could only say helplessly. This time I have indeed lost. Flying Bird then revealed a victorious smile, and immediately after, her face turned red as she bashfully stood up. If that's the case, then hurry up and put me down. Noah smiled bitterly as he put Flying Bird down. Then he suddenly thought of something and was suddenly shocked. Not good. How are the others? The collision of the two, another cosmology, had completely razed the surrounding area to the ground. Looking up, the surrounding land that was originally abandoned was now completely destroyed and turned into scorched earth. Under such circumstances, if Flying Bird could rely on Almadia's defense to escape, then what about the others? As soon as this thought appeared in Noah's mind, a humorous laugh rang out. Ah, your companions are here. As the voice fell, a few figures appeared out of thin air, directly flashing out of space. Impressively, it was the group of No Name. In addition, there was also Vera, Jack, and Aisha. Aisha looked at the scorched earth around her and let out a gasp of surprise. It's actually become so serious. That's right. Vera had a dumbfounded expression. So powerful. It's only a game. You all are too reckless. Jack let out a rare bitter smile. If it wasn't for Vera's spatial jump, everyone would be in a miserable state. It's precisely because we wanted you all to save the situation that we had you all hide at the side, right? 16th Knights patted the dust on his body, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. In the end, just like the plan, we obtained victory. Flying Bird. Yao walked toward Flying Bird and extended his hand. High five. Flying Bird happily high-fived Yao, sharing the victory of the game. Only Letitia, Pest, Wren, and Black Rabbit were speechless as they looked at their surroundings that had been razed to the ground, and revealed sorrowful expressions. Now who knows how much time we'll have to spend to restore the land here? Letitia, spare me. I'm already angry enough. Pest. If you think about it carefully, this area will have to be rebuilt sooner or later anyway. Now that it's like this, it's much easier. Wren, whoa. Black Rabbit still stuffed in his mouth. At this moment, 16th Knights arrived before Noah and looked straight at Noah. Do you see now? Even if we are far from being a match for you in a head-on battle, it's not like we have no chance of winning in a game. After saying those words, 16th Knights scratched his head in a somewhat embarrassed manner. Then, as if giving up, he spoke. Thus, you can do whatever you want to do. Even if you're not here in the East District, there's still us. Hearing those words, Noah was finally stunned. At this moment, no matter how slow Noah was, he should have realized what was going on. Although these three problem children were talking about revenge, they were actually using this game to tell Noah one thing. That was, even if Noah was not here, they would still do their best to protect the East District. It's not like we've been stagnant all this time. It's just as you've seen. Right now, all of us have sufficient battle strength to deal with any situation, Flying Bird said with great confidence. Since that's the case, what else do you have to worry about? Don't worry, Yao nodded at Noah. There's still us here. Letitia, Pest, Wren, Black Rabbit, Vera, Jack, Aisha, and the others all looked at Noah. Their eyes revealed the same expression as the three problem children, gentle and serious. Looking at his companions, Noah's eyes flickered. After a long while, he finally laughed heartily. Then I'll leave it to you all. Everyone nodded in agreement. Only then did the unique farewell ceremony come to an end. Noah left this world with a peace of mind. Chapter 16:26. When Noah opened his eyes again, the usual pure white space appeared in front of him. Feeling the comfortable feeling as if he had returned to his mother's body, Noah's mood was more or less complicated. One. And as if seeing through the complicated feelings in Noah's heart, in the pure white world, pieces of feathers emitting a soft white light flew around Noah like little birds, and began to circle around Noah. That was a scene that often happened in the past. Looking at the pieces of feathers that were constantly circling around him, Noah's mood was unexpectedly comforted, and he raised one hand. The pieces of feathers were immediately attracted to Noah like white pigeons that were attracted by food, and they all flew to Noah's slowly raised hand and gathered on it. As if there was a gust of wind blowing, the pieces of feathers danced up and down. In the pure white world, the scene of the young man playing with the feathers fluttering in the air gave people a very warm feeling. This feeling also penetrated into Noah's heart. Therefore, Noah finally seemed to have made up his mind, and he waved his hand to disperse the pieces of feathers that had gathered. Then Noah raised his head and looked above the pure white world, his dark and deep eyes flashing with a strange light. Back then, when Noah used the sovereignty of the 24 suns to try to draw out the possibility in his body, in his dream, he could not help but continue to rise in this world. In the end, he saw the crimson sky. Then, in reality, does the crimson sky also exist? If it does, is there something in the crimson sky that has been troubling Noah all this time? What kind of existence are those things? At the thought of this, Noah's heart flashed with extreme hesitation, and even his expression became a little uncertain. Phew! After an unknown period of time, Noah let out a sigh of relief, and a determined emotion appeared in his eyes. Fly. After issuing an order to the feather necklace on his neck, Noah's body became light as a feather. The outline of his body seemed to be wrapped in a layer of dim light as he floated into the air. Immediately after, Noah controlled his body and flew towards the top of the pure white world. Noah did not know that below him, the feathers flying back and forth seemed to have been stimulated, trembling back and forth, falling into a commotion. Noah did not have the time to notice this scene. His body had already risen to a certain height, and he could no longer see the fluttering feathers as he soared into the sky. Noah didn't know how long he had been flying. In the space between worlds, there was no concept of time or space. He couldn't even feel how high he was flying. If this was a normal world, Noah would be able to judge based on the strength of the wind and the thinness of the air. However, in the space between worlds, there was no wind and no air, and it was impossible for life to survive. Only Noah could inconceivably move around in the space between worlds. Undoubtedly, in a normal world, Noah also needed air, and he also needed all the living conditions that a human needs. However, in the space between worlds, all of this seemed to have nothing to do with him, and Noah could move freely. However, all this time, Noah had not moved much in the space between worlds. At best, he used the space between worlds as a world transfer station and carried out world transfers. This was the first time that Noah carried out his own activities in the space between worlds. Therefore, Noah did not know how high he had flown, nor did he know how long he had been flying. Noah only knew that when he flew to a certain height, his heart inexplicably had the thought of retreating. That kind of thought, like a shadow, could not help but blind his heart. With this kind of shadow, at a certain moment, Noah seemed to feel something and raised his head, looking up. In the next second, Noah's eyes suddenly froze, and his body suddenly stopped. Clang! He saw that above the pure white world, a crimson sky was imprinted there, emitting a blood-like light. Staring at the crimson sky above, Noah's fists unconsciously began to clench tightly. Sure enough, it exists. In the dream, Noah did not observe it clearly. Now, Noah could clearly see that the crimson sky, rather than calling it a sky, was more like a strange space. The surrounding was pure white in all directions, and only that space with a diameter of more than a few thousand meters was crimson red. That crimson space made the shadow in Noah's heart expand dozens of times, or even hundreds of times, causing Noah's clenched fists to begin to sweat. Noah's intuition told him. Next, he absolutely can't go any further. Noah believes in his intuition. If the scene inside is the same as what I saw in the dream, then even if I go in, the consequences will be unimaginable, right? Noah gritted his teeth. Since the scene in the dream has been confirmed to be real, then the next step is to ask Gaia and Aleia. With this idea, Noah took a deep look at the crimson space, turned around and wanted to fly down. However, at this moment, two familiar tender female voices with extremely strong anxiety and panic suddenly exploded in Noah's ears. Little Noah, run. The moment these two familiar tender female voices suddenly sounded in Noah's ears, the shadow in Noah's heart suddenly exploded, turning into the crisis of death. Noah's pupils directly shrank without any hesitation. His body turned into a sharp arrow and shot down. Crack! Almost at the same time, a sound like something cracking was very clearly transmitted into Noah's ears. Noah didn't stop. As he shot downwards, he turned his head back and looked up. The next second, the scene imprinted in Noah's eyes made his scalp explode, and goosebumps grew all over his body. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. In the distance, the crimson space suddenly cracked like glass. In the cracks, a blood-like liquid seeped out. No, that's not liquid. What seeped out from the cracks of the crimson space was an overwhelming, densely packed group of Grim Reapers. Yes, Grim Reaper. The cloak covering their body was red. The Grim Reaper that appeared in Noah's dream. Crack. At this moment, an indescribable sound rang out from the bodies of the Grim Reapers. Then Noah saw it. The dense group of locust-like Grim Reapers, like a rain curtain pouring down from the crimson sky, swept down violently. Undoubtedly, their speed was not fast, but the distance between them and Noah was shortened by an unknown amount in an instant. Bang! Without any hesitation, Noah mobilized the endless energy in his body and turned it all into divine power. Like a golden storm, it soared up from his body. In the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns on the stone plate trembled, then suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the phoenix. Crack. Noah directly turned into a phantom, entered the world of speed and rushed in the direction of the ground. Something that Noah did not expect happened. Crack. He saw that the dense group of locust-like grim reapers once again made an indescribable sound, as if they had also entered the world of speed, and shrouded down overwhelmingly. What? Noah's expression changed abruptly. In just a moment, the rain-like grim reapers were like turbulent waves, roaring and shrouding Noah's body. Noah looked at the grim reapers that were like monstrous waves, roaring and shrouding his body. He wanted to make a certain degree of resistance, but his body's instinct seemed to be telling him not to waste his energy, and he stiffened up. Noah's mind became blank. Chapter 16:27. Screech Dash. With an indescribable sound, the densely packed group of reapers surged downwards like a tidal wave that could devour everything. From Noah's perspective, the scene was as if the entire sky was filled with grim reapers that were as red as blood. They collectively emitted a terrifying aura that poured down like a torrential downpour. It was completely meaningless to compare them in terms of quantity, right? This was because each of the grim reapers was a few sizes bigger than Noah. Their height was estimated to be close to 4 meters tall. There were countless of such grim reapers. How many billions would that be? What about billions? Or tens of billions? It would be meaningless to even count the number of grim reapers, right? The human tide formed by such a terrifying number of grim reapers was enough to drown a continent, let alone Noah, who was only one person. Therefore, looking at the dense group of grim reapers that poured down like a torrential rain and surged like a roaring wave, Noah almost subconsciously understood what was going on. Currently he had no means to resist them at all. So what if he had the authority to display a variety of abilities? So what if he had a treasure vault with more than 1,000 types of relics? So what if he had the physical ability to surpass deities? So what if he had endless energy? Currently, he definitely had no way to block the grim reaper's tide that was surging toward him like a roaring wave. It was not that Noah did not have enough means, but the difference in level was too great. It was just like how a world boxing champion could easily defeat hundreds or thousands of ordinary people like himself, but even if such an existence threw a punch at the sky, let alone cause any impact, it wouldn't even be able to touch anything, right? For Noah, the grim reaper's tide was the sky that he could not touch. No matter how brilliant his means were, he would still not be able to touch the overwhelming red shadows of death that were surging toward him. That was the fact that Noah's instinct told him. Although he had not tried, even if he tried, it would just be a dying struggle, right? However, so what if you're struggling? A violent hurricane-like divine power surged from Noah's body. Like another monstrous golden wave, it swept across the area below the grim reaper's tide that was pouring down like a torrential downpour. Instead of dying in despair, why don't we fight for our lives before we die? At this moment, in the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it trembled like never before. Immediately after, half of the 10 patterns blossomed with dazzling light. The giant, white horse, the dragon emperor, beasts, phoenix. At this moment, Noah pushed his power to the limit, using 5 incarnations at the same time. I am the strongest and I hold all victory in my hands. No matter if it is a human or a demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. As Noah chanted the holy words of the God of Victory, a terrifying storm of divine energy surged from his body. His pitch-black and deep eyes were dyed with a dazzling golden color, flashing with a brilliant light. I don't care what you are. If you want to take my life, let's give it a try then. Amidst the violent roar, the terrifying divine storm that surged from Noah's body began to flash with a bright light. The light was like a myriad of stars, flashing and condensing together, forming a shape. In just a moment, countless xenomorphs appeared from the divine storm. They were handsome draconic horses. Their entire bodies were covered in crimson armor, and their armor was decorated with dazzling gems. They had a dragon horn on their foreheads, and their eyes flashed with red light. Their bodies were dozens of meters tall, and they stepped on golden flames. They were gigantic dragon horses, and their bodies were majestic. Combining the power of the giant, white horse, dragon emperor, beasts, and phoenix, Noah created a tide of draconic horses that was comparable to the death god's tide. This result caused Noah's whole body to burn with burning pain. His internal organs felt like they were about to explode, letting out an unbearable sound. Screech. Seeing the innumerable majestic dragon horses appear, the tide of death that was swarming over let out a roar that sounded like a furious roar. Meh. As if competing with each other, the majestic draconic horses let out a neatly arranged neigh that resounded throughout the entire space between worlds. The neigh of the draconic horses faintly carried the roar of dragons and tigers, like an echo, turning into ripples that reverberated in the sky. Immediately, the golden draconic horse tide and the red death god's tide rushed out at lightning speed, crossing the entire space in an instant, quietly colliding. Rumble. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the draconic horse tide and the death god's tide that fiercely collided with each other turned into a terrifying golden flame and a red storm, crazily entangling with each other. Boom. Like a star exploding, the unimaginable golden flame and red storm swept out from the center of the pure white world, instantly expanding to an area of thousands of meters. If such a collision occurred in an ordinary world, perhaps at this moment, the world would have already let out a mournful cry, the space would have already been shattered inch by inch, and even the atmosphere would have been completely evaporated, leaving not a trace behind. Unfortunately, this pure white world called space between worlds was terrifyingly sturdy. There was no concept of time, nor was there any concept of space. Even the atmosphere did not exist, allowing the terrifying golden sea of fire and scarlet storm to silently expand, occupying a corner of the world. However, if someone were to be caught in it, the consequences would be unimaginable. At the very least, even existences like the White Yaksha and the Queen of All Saints would at least be seriously injured if they were to be caught in it. Undoubtedly, it was a collision of this level. In the next second, the scales of victory tipped in favor of one side. Wong. The scarlet storm appeared to be mocking something as it emitted a buzzing sound. Immediately, it forcefully penetrated the bright golden sea of fire. The terrifying flame sea that was formed by the power of the 5 incarnations of Giant, White Horse, Dragon Emperor, Beast Horde, and Phoenix, was like an illusion at this moment. It could not block the red storm at all, and the red storm passed through it as if it did not see anything. Wadash. Noah's expression changed drastically. Taking advantage of this moment, the red storm passed through the terrifying golden flame sea and rushed in front of Noah. Like a bloody mouth, it swelled and crazily enveloped Noah's body. Noah was already powerless to turn the situation around. Clang. Just as the red storm was about to swallow Noah's body, a bright golden light suddenly bloomed on Noah's body. Noah did not even have the time to react. A golden sword that looked like a key suddenly emerged from his body. With a turn of his body, it shot towards the sky. That is, Noah could not help but be shocked. This was because Noah did not recognize the golden sword that was shaped like a key. It was the gate of Babylon that Gaia and Aleia gave to Noah. Under Noah's gaze, the golden sword that shot up into the sky and met the red storm that was surging towards it trembled slightly. The gate of Babylon treasure exploded in an instant, turning into golden powder that sprinkled down from the sky. Then it stopped in midair like a layer of golden light film that covered the sky. The moment the crimson storm came into contact with the powdery light film, it abruptly froze and was unable to move any further. Between heaven and earth, silence was restored. Noah could only stare blankly at this scene. He was unable to react at all and his body fell down. Then 2 pairs of rather tender hands hugged him. Chapter 16:28. In the pure white world, 2 petite girls hugged Noah from the left and right as they descended from the sky and slowly landed on the ground. In the surroundings, the feathers that were emitting a soft white light immediately surrounded Noah, as if they were extremely happy about the result of Noah's escape, and they danced in the air excitedly. It was only at this moment that Noah finally reacted. He looked to his side and was immediately stunned. Gaia? Aleia? The petite girls that suddenly appeared were Gaia and Aleia. Are you okay? Gaia said with lingering fear. That was really scary. It's different from our world. There is no concept of time here. Therefore, although we immediately entered this space between worlds, the time still doesn't match. Aleia said with an indifferent expression. Fortunately, we made it in time. Hearing Gaia and Aleia's words, Noah's expression was a little uncertain. But why are you here? In the past, Gaia and Aleia undoubtedly said that only Noah could enter this space between worlds. Even the 2 great restraints couldn't enter this space between worlds. Now, how did the 2 great restraints come out of his world? Don't be surprised, little Noah. We didn't lie to you. If we relied on our own strength, we wouldn't be able to enter this space between worlds. Gaia gave a rare bitter laugh. This is an exception. There won't be another chance like this in the future, right? In short, it's good that you're fine, Alea said. After all, it would be very troublesome to explain the situation in detail. Hearing this, Noah's face showed a trace of bitterness. He raised his head and looked at the red storm outside the powder film. His voice was more or less self-deprecating. Is there anything more troublesome than that thing? Gaia and Alea were speechless. However, it was clear that Noah was saved because of Gaia and Alea. I didn't expect the gate of Babylon that you gave me to be able to block that thing. Noah's eyes flickered. It seems that it's not just a treasury. No, it's really just a treasury. Gaia shook her head. The gate of Babylon doesn't have any special power. It's just a treasury. However, in order to make it useful at a crucial moment, we added some special things inside. Alea also looked at the sky. So, just like our appearance here, the gate of Babylon can resolve the crisis brought about by the disaster. This is the only time it can do so. Is that so? Noah nodded slowly and looked at Gaia and Alea with an unprecedentedly serious expression. Then, can you explain to me what's going on? Gaia and Alea exchanged glances before turning to Noah in unison. As this day finally arrived, Gaia wasn't as naughty as before. Instead, she was like a wise person who had seen through everything. Her expression was unusually calm. Although I knew that you would have to face all of this sooner or later, I didn't expect it to come so suddenly. Suddenly? It was indeed very sudden. If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah have such a dream when he was trying to use the sun's sovereignty to draw out the possibility of the disaster from his body? If it wasn't sudden, why would Noah encounter the biggest crisis in history without any preparation? However, just like what Gaia had said, sooner or later, Noah would have to face all of this. At this stage, there's no benefit in continuing to hide it from you. Alea's gaze turned to Noah. Since you suddenly went to search for that thing, it proves that the time is ripe for you to come into contact with your true mission. In the past, I hid it from you because I didn't want you to come into contact with that thing before the time was ripe. Now there's no need for that. Little Noah, we will tell you everything now. Gaia smiled at Noah. Including the meaning of your existence and why you exist. Gaia and Alea looked at each other again and raised one hand at the same time. Clang. The fluttering feathers suddenly gathered and surrounded Noah, Gaia, and Alea, releasing dazzling radiance. The light enveloped the three of them, causing their figures to be enveloped by the white light in an instant. Then they disappeared. Noah felt a blur in front of his eyes, and his entire vision was dyed white. Then two small hands held both of Noah's hands, bringing him back to his senses. After coming back to reality, the radiance in front of Noah's eyes began to fade. The scene in front of Noah was still that pure white world. However, looking at this pure white world, Noah was stunned. Because in this pure white world, there were no feathers emitting a soft white light, nor was there a bone-chilling red storm. There was only a hazy mist. It was extremely hazy and filled the entire between the worlds with white mist. This is... Noah couldn't help but look around. Don't be nervous. Alea held Noah's hand tightly. Now, what you see is just an image reproduced by the world. It's not the real world. That's right. Gaia nodded. This used to be the between the worlds before anything was born. The between the worlds before anything was born? Noah said with uncertainty. In other words, before the world was born? Yes. Alea looked at the white mist that filled the entire space. At the very beginning, before the world was born, the between the worlds was like this. At the same time, this is the most primitive between the worlds. Gaia extended her hand and pointed in front. Little Noah, look there. Noah immediately looked in the direction Gaia pointed and looked in front of the white mist. Because the mist was too dense at the beginning, Noah couldn't see anything at all. However, gradually, Noah discovered something. In front of the extremely dense white mist, there was a crystal. It was an extremely pure and clean crystal without any color or color. It was as clear as a lake. 1. The pure crystal floated in the air, and as it spun, it emitted wisps of mist. The white mist and emotions in the entire pure white world were all emitted from the crystal. Looking at the dazzling and beautiful crystal, Noah almost subconsciously asked, What is that? That is the center of the between the worlds. Alea immediately replied. It is also the origin of everything. Without it, nothing would be born in this world, Gaia said. From a human's point of view, this place is equivalent to the universe. However, in this universe called Between the Worlds, what is born is not a celestial body but a world. All the worlds are born from the center of the Between the Worlds because that is the origin of the mist. Aleya's voice clearly entered Noah's ears. Originally, in the Between the Worlds nothing would be born, but the mist emitted from the center brought life to the Between the Worlds. Following Aleya's words in front of them, the mist suddenly gathered into a ball without any reason. The ball of mist started to beat like a heart. With every beat, the ball of mist would start to condense. In the end, the ball of mist emitted a gentle light and turned into a feather. Do you see it? Gaia pointed at the feather. That is the starting world. The starting world. Noah looked at Gaia. Why do you call it the starting world? The one who answered this question was not Gaia but Aleya. Because that world is the reason why there are so many worlds in the Between the Worlds. Chapter 16:29. In fact, this was not something difficult to understand. The universe could give birth to many planets. However, within the range of human observation, life had only appeared on Earth in the entire universe. If Between the Worlds was compared to the universe, then the same logic applied. In the beginning of this universe, only one world was born. That wasn't an amazing world. It didn't have a restraining force like ours, nor did it have the mysteries that little Noah encountered in the past. It was just an extremely ordinary world. Gaia looked at the lonely feather fluttering in the hazy white fog. His voice seemed to come from a very distant place. In that world, humans didn't have any special powers. They only had to repeat their ordinary lives day after day. There was no mystery to speak of. However, such an ordinary world became the beginning of the entire Between the Worlds, Aleya said faintly. Because even if there was no mystery, humans had extremely rich imaginations. They had always been pursuing mystery in their fantasies. Parallel worlds, dimensional spaces, alien domains, superpowers, different dimensions. Humans with intelligence used extremely rich imaginations to pursue these mysteries. They also created these mysterious existences in their own minds and fantasized wildly. Gaia smiled helplessly. As the will of the planet, I can't understand why humans would pursue these things. However, those fantasies are the foundation of existences like us. While Gaia and Aleya were talking, the hazy fog in front of them changed again. Around the lonely feather fluttering in Between the Worlds, the hazy fog had gradually gathered into clumps and was beating like a heart. As it beat, the clumps of fog also condensed. In the end, those clumps all turned into feathers in a soft white light. Just like what you saw after the birth of the original world, more and more worlds were born, Aleya said to Noah. That wasn't a world that was born by chance. There was only one world that was born purely by chance. The worlds after that were all created by drawing on the fantasies of the humans in that world. They were all specious worlds that were born from the imagination of that world. Absorbing the fantasies of humans? Noah couldn't help but ask. Does the fog have such properties? Therefore, we also call the fog imagination. Gaia said with a smile. And after you were born, the Between the Worlds that you saw had already become a universe that absorbed the fantasies of the original world. It's a universe filled with fantasies, Aleya said word by word. A universe filled with fantasies. An all-encompassing fantasy universe. Noah muttered to himself as he repeated this sentence. After a long while, he fell silent and suddenly opened his mouth again. Then what's the deal with my birth that you just mentioned? Your birth, it wasn't by chance. Gaia hesitated for a moment and then sighed. Your existence is a part of fighting against fantasies. Part of fighting against illusions? Noah's hand tightened slightly, and his eyes flickered as he spoke in a low voice. Then are those red things? Gaia and Aleya nodded their heads with a heavy heart. Although the fantasies of the humans in the original world gave birth to many worlds, humans were originally an existence that didn't know whether they were good or evil, Aleya said with her identity as the amalgamation of human consciousness. Naturally, if there are good fantasies, there will also be bad fantasies. Those fantasies also became nutrients for the fog and were absorbed by the fog. While speaking, the fog in front of them changed again. A ball of fog gathered together like the world that was born before. It beat like a heart and gradually condensed. However, the ball of fog gradually pulsed and condensed, and its color began to change. From the pure white color at the beginning, it gradually turned into the color of blood. Seeing the ball of blood-red fog, Noah's palm couldn't help but smoke. Gaia and Aleya's expressions also became very serious. Under the gaze of the three people, the blood-red fog continued to shrink. In the end, accompanied by a bloody light, it turned into a red space. That is the existence that absorbed all of the evil fantasies. Gaia bit her lips. All of the disasters started from there. As his voice faded, the scarlet space suddenly began to crack, creating many cracks. One by one, deathly red figures rushed out from the crack. They surged out like a tide and rushed towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they flew towards the feathers that were emitting a gentle white light. At this moment, the feathers in the pure white world were like frightened birds, fleeing in all directions. However, there were still some feathers that were caught by the red figures. The red figures, like the god of death, turned into a red storm one after another. It was like a sharp blade that ruthlessly cut through the feathers. The feathers that were cut by the crimson storm were all cut into halves, losing all their luster and falling to the ground in a dull manner. Seeing this scene, Noah's heart burned with rage. If it wasn't for the fact that everything in front of him was just an image, Noah wouldn't have been able to stop himself from attacking. Although Noah couldn't do anything to those red figures, Noah could only watch as the worlds were cut in half. That feeling was really unbearable. Originally, the world should not be able to interfere with the world. Just like how if two planets of the same mass in the universe collide with each other, they would definitely die at the same time. As an existence that shares the same root as the world, the shadow that has absorbed the fog of evil should not be able to affect the world. Aleya continued to speak with an incomparably calm and indifferent tone. However, those red figures are the embodiment of the evil fantasies. They are like cells that are born with the ability to devour. They can affect the worlds and even destroy them. Fortunately, those worlds were born from the evil fantasies, Gaia added. As long as the worlds and the space between worlds aren't completely destroyed and the people's fantasies still exist, then these worlds can be repaired. Wait. Noah was suddenly startled. Doesn't that mean, looks like you've already thought of it? Gaia faintly sighed. That's right. The only things that can be repaired are the worlds that were born from the evil fantasies. If the original world is destroyed, then it definitely can't be repaired. And as luck would have it, the starting world was destroyed. Aleya looked up and stared ahead. It was during the first shadow hunt. Noah followed Aleya's gaze and looked forward. There was a feather that wasn't cut in half like the other feathers. Instead, it was shattered like glass by the red storm, leaving behind only a pile of debris. The shadow that was born from the evil thoughts can affect and destroy other worlds, but other worlds still can't interfere with it as it has the same origin, Gaia slowly said. Under such circumstances, a portion of the worlds that had perfect wills began to realize that they had to think of a solution. Otherwise, these worlds that had no resistance at all would one day be completely destroyed. For this reason, the world itself initiated an action that all the other worlds responded to and began. Aleya turned his head and looked straight at Noah. They gathered the fragments of the original world that could no longer be repaired and gathered the power of all the worlds to turn those fragments into a life form. This sentence made Noah's heart beat fiercely. Because the original world could no longer be repaired, the world successfully interfered with its fragments and also successfully injected life into those fragments, turning them into a human. Gaia held Noah's hand and looked straight at him. That person is you, Noah. What formed your body was the fragments of the original world. What formed your life was the power of all the worlds. Aleya also held Noah's hand. Therefore, you are in existence on the same level as the worlds. You are also the child of the worlds born from the many worlds. You can freely travel between worlds, find the lost world fragments, and repair the destroyed worlds. After all, every world here was born from the human imagination of the original world that formed Noah's body. Noah was born with the ability to repair these worlds. As for the shadow that was born from the evil thoughts, it was also an illusion of evil that was obtained from the original world. Therefore, Noah should have the ability to interfere with the other side and eliminate all the disasters that were born from the evil thoughts. If it wasn't for the fact that the original world was just an ordinary world and didn't have any mysteries, the world itself wouldn't have been destroyed so easily. Gaia and Aleya said at the same time. Therefore, Noah, you are the only existence that can eliminate the natural enemies of the world. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.